the obvious topic.
You guys finally get a Destiny 2 episode.
Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, Mr.
Saw Bridges bringing you guys lucky episode 94.
Look, we realized that me hitting the table was just not a very audibly pleasant experience, even though it's been tradition. But you know what? There's nothing like 94 episodes in to decide that you want to completely change everything you're doing with your life. So this has now become not a gaming podcast. This is now a woodworking construction podcast. So with that being said,
let's just when we get like microphone arms and like, let's just get like a piece of plywood and sit on it and you just smash through it as like a meme video. Like, welcome, and just completely just destroy the table.
Destroy it, yeah. It'd be the temporary table. But anyway, jokes aside, we are Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. We come to you every Monday at 10 a.m. PST and 12 p.m. CST for video pleasure. You can find us on YouTube. And if you like what we're doing there, consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification, let you know when our videos go live, which we said every Monday, but there are also our bi-weekly reader mails that are coming up, and of course other things we have in the work right now under our general umbrella of Nartech Gaming and or Nartech. We are kind of focusing on how to handle that for the future right now. But you can also find us. Oh, actually, if you listen to us on YouTube and you have any thoughts about what we're talking about, let us know in the comments below. We like to hear your thoughts on everything that we talk about. If you want to listen to us only and just hear our soothing voices and my terrible lisp in your headphones, in your car, at your desk, whatever, you can find us on podcast services, be it iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Google Podcast. If it's a podcast service, I can guarantee you we're on there. And if it's not, message us, tell me so I can beat somebody up. I'm kidding. Violence is never an answer, except for in video games.
Sometimes.
True. Okay. Anyway, you can find us on social media if you'd like at Triangle SQRD. That's our Twitter handle. If you want to find us on Facebook, we have a Facebook group, Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. You can ask to be joined there, and we will gladly do so. I will. Saul does not have a Facebook, just so set your expectations right. If you want to talk to us all day, every day, moment to moment, you can join our Discord, which we have in the description below. And if you would like to support what we're doing with the show, with some changes that are going to be coming to that, you can find us on Patreon, if you still use Patreon, at patreon.com/Nartech Gaming. That is our parent, like we said, our parent channel idea. So you can find us there, support us there. We have some cool ideas coming. I teased, and we would love to hear your feedback specifically on one thing. We wanted to kind of do a system to reward people who support us or back us for long periods of time. And the thing I thought would be the most cool would be personalized little trophies. And we were trying to figure out how often we'd be able to give those and what pricing we could do. So our current idea, and this is subject to change, let us know your thoughts, is going to be that at the 6-month mark of you supporting us at this tier, you will get a customized little bronze trophy. It'll be a trophy just like you expect on a platform. The platform will have information like your gamer tag on it, and so how long you've been a supporter of us. And then after a year, that will be a silver trophy sent to you, the same basic idea. And then a gold. And then lastly, once you've supported us for 2 years, a platinum. If you think that's too big of an amount of time, let us know. We can't guarantee anything right now. We're trying to figure out the best way to do this from a cost perspective. But it's a fun way of feeling like, I like the idea of you've done something to support us, so we're giving you a fun reward back. And trophies seem the most fitting for what we're doing on the show here and our love of PlayStation and our love of trophies. So it seemed like a cool way to move forward and have something for you guys to show. And it would also give you cool trophies if you don't have any, like the one that I've showed prominently on this show a number of times. I should have grabbed it and pulled it in.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We are working on doing a trial one right now and having our contact send one to us. Shout out to John. So once we have that, we'll have a picture to give you an idea of what they are, and then get a little bit more feedback. And then from there, because we aren't just made of money, we're going to make a Patreon goal. And what we'll do is once we hit the goal that we meet, be it number of patrons or money per month, we will go ahead and move that into working. And that's just so that we don't end up putting a lot of money down on the line and then nobody doing it. Not that we think that's going to happen, and the reception from the Twitter posts so far has been good, but we don't want that to be something that just happens and then we end up with a lot of little trophies, as cool as they may be. So with that said, Saul, I think it's time to move into the episode. What have you been playing this week?
Destiny 2 and Divinity 2. 2D2s.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. We've really been grinding on Destiny 2 for the Forges. Finally got our clan together, the Shadow of Yharnam. So if you guys want to be part of the Soy Boys, it is an open clan. If you just search the Shadow of Yharnam on Bungie Clans, you can find it and just jump on in. Or if you want to play Destiny with us, we play pretty much 3 or 4 nights a week. And we're right now focusing on Forges and unlocking Forges for those that don't have them unlocked. And then, of course, once we get enough people who are high enough level, we'll do raids. So, yeah. Always feel free to join us on that. Add us. We put our PSNs in the description below. But yeah, Divinity 2, like I said last week, I think in the week before, to get my D&D itch, I've been playing that. So that's really it.
I've seen you on Destiny a lot. I haven't seen you on that, but I guess, we do have oddly differing schedules sometimes.
I hide myself off a lot until I play Destiny, because now that Joe is no longer part of the clan I'm in, I left that clan, so he cannot actually see me online in Destiny to go to my party. So all the reason for Joe to hop in our clan. But he's being kind of stubborn. He wants us to get a raid together for 3 weeks in a row. So we need 4 talented individuals that will raid with us 3 weeks in a row and join our clan. So
which I think
I'll
we're
pay you.
Very close to. I think Vince will.
Vince, Kiki, Liam. We have Jason now, so that I'm looking forward to playing with him.
Gavin,
and so like that right there.
I think we have a group.
Yeah, we have.
We got to convince Joe to do it. But yeah, if you want to join that, head on over and do that. You can play with us, and definitely Saul. I still play a lot, but I'm also trying to work through other stuff. So anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Finally, I bought it back on Black Friday while it was $27 because I figured, hey, it's unlikely that it'll be this cheap, or at least any cheaper than this anytime soon. So I'll go ahead and catch it. So I finally started it up, and it's an interesting thing. I felt this way about Origins too, but the Assassin's Creed series is in this weird area where I feel like the game is fine. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it, and it's got some small things that do make you go, well, this is trying to be an Assassin's Creed game, but there's so much more that's like, this is not trying to be an Assassin's Creed game. Now, that's for the better and for the worse. What they did is they took the same approach that you saw Guerrilla take with like Horizon Zero Dawn, where you can go stealthy if you want to, and you can hide. And this is also probably pretty similar to what I've seen and what I imagine it plays like in the newest Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But essentially, you can hide and brush and everything, and that'll hide you from enemies, and you can stealth attack them and whatnot. And there's benefits for doing that. You have armor that gives you different stats, and the armor's leveled, so there's actually a reason to want to get some. There's different levels of armor. You can have legendary, rare, all these different levels of it so that they're there. But it does come off feeling like it really probably shouldn't be an Assassin's Creed game, and that's both of these games have a weird thing. The story justifies the change in mechanic enough that it's okay to an extent, because like in Origins, the Assassin's Guild, or whatever you want to call it, the Assassins group, has not been started until the very end of it, right? And then that's where you roll through into it, and everybody knew that. I really wouldn't consider that spoiler territory, but in case you thought it was, that's why it's Origins. But yeah, so you go into that, so it's like, okay, well then they wouldn't have this style of fighting down yet because they're not actively seeking to be assassins. They're actually just rolling through some events that lead to the assassins being there once they realize that they need to operate from a little bit more in the shadows.
And you really enjoyed Origins, right?
I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it. It had its problems, and so does Odyssey to an extent. But it's fun, and it's one of those things where Odyssey takes place even before Origins, and it's, from what I can understand, it's the origins of the Templar, which is the longtime Assassin's Creed bad guy, or at least from our side of the group, it's the opposition of the assassins. So it's interesting in the way that this is going on, and the game is good, but there's a couple of things where I feel like they almost purposely took a lot of inspiration from Horizon. So do you remember the cauldrons in Horizon, and how when you'd go to them, they'd have these big triangular doors?
Yeah.
Okay, there's literally a place in Assassin's Creed
that looks just like
where
that.
You go to it, and it's like this weird island of something. It's supposed to be some crazy thing that came before, and this is pretty early game, but spoiler section just for a couple seconds, and it's not anything major. But essentially, you have to have a certain thing there, and you have it because you're of a certain thing, and then it'll open this door for you that no one else was able to get into all this time. And it comes off a lot like dealing with what happened in Horizon and the imagery used, like the big triangular structure where you go in and there's things that look like they're obviously too advanced for the world that we're in currently. And it was very interesting, but the game is good. I'm playing as Cassandra. I don't know how that plays out because you can choose to be Alexios or Cassandra, and the story essentially just flips itself depending on which character you go with. They're not major changes, but I think that if you ever get time, I think you would enjoy the game.
I just looked it up on PSN store. It's still $60.
Yeah, I figured.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I bought it physically. So if nothing else, when I'm done with it, I may let you borrow it if you have interest in playing
I thought you
it.
sold it already.
Odyssey? Or Origins?
No, I'm talking about Origins.
Oh, no. Origins, no, I
Origins
sold it
is
already.
still $60.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, either way, I've been having fun with that, and obviously I played Destiny 2 with you guys a couple times this week. And let's see, still playing Iconoclast on Vita, getting my Vita time in. And I guess, I mean, if you want to throw this in there, I played/watched Bandersnatch, like right after we recorded last week.
It was good.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I fell asleep through half of it, and we ended up going back through and finishing it up. But it was really good.
Oh, are you saying it was boring, Saul?
No, I was just that tired.
Yeah. We did it very late, too. And we kept going back and getting different endings for a little bit. And then we were just like, well, we're too tired. It's 1 o'clock and we really need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I do plan to eventually go back and see if I can get like just a wildly different ending. But it was pretty good and an interesting idea.
Apparently, there's still endings people haven't gotten yet. Yeah. So
I'm a little surprised at that. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I ended up not watching it with the controller because we were just in the bed and like we rolled across it. I wanted to see if the controller would actually react, like if they had built something in visually or into the video that was, because it wasn't a normal video. And the reason you know that is because you could not fast forward. You could only do chunks of time, and eventually it would stop you if you were coming up to a decision.
I never tried that.
So it wasn't a standard video file. So I wonder if they would have been able to encode a way for if it could tell that you were using a controller to send vibration, like, to send DualShock
I'm
signals.
sure they could have done that. I think that might have been too much time for them.
Yeah, and I don't know if they did or not. I'm gonna go look it up. I meant to because it's one of those things where I feel like people are probably saying it jokingly, like, well, it's a game. So, but I am curious if you had that experience, you played with a controller, let me know. Yeah,
for those that have never done it before, I highly suggest you check out that series that it came from, Black Mirror.
I have still not done that, but that has
every episode's a standalone episode.
Made me interested in it.
Yeah. But I guess we'll drop into the hop for those that missed that term. And for those that don't know what the series is, this is this week's PlayStation releases coming over from the drop at the PSN blog. First up on the list, we have Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown. We have As Divine Hearts 2 for PS4 and PS Vita. The Grand Tour game for PS4. Holy Potatoes, We're in Space for PS4. Kingdom of Blades for PSVR. Onimusha Warlords for PS4. Panda Hero for PS4. Planet Rix 3 or RIX or 13 for PS4 and PS Vita. Resident Evil 2 one-shot demo for PS4. Smoke and Sacrifice for PS4. Vane for PS4. The Walking Dead, the final season, episode 3 for PS4. Y2K, a postmodern RPG for PS4. And that's it.
Okay. Well, Y2K has been in development for a long time. I've played it at both PSXs I went to. So that says 2016 and 2017, and it still hadn't been out.
I've heard
that's one of those funny things. Huh?
I've heard like good things about it.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It has the way, unless because that's another thing actually that we talked about that in terms of Celeste. It's very interesting seeing games that stay in development this long because they change a lot of things about them from when you see them at trade shows like that, or whatever you want to call it, fan shows or whatever. But we saw Celeste and it was in a very, very different form than what it launched in. It was still a platformer, of course, and it was still a precision platformer, but it didn't really have any focus on story. The character looked different. A lot of the world art was very differently done, and you saw the game change into something totally different. I'm almost curious if Y2K is still staying the way it was, but just to kind of have you seen anything on it, like the way that it plays out?
No.
So it's a turn-based thing, and essentially with it being the Y2K thing, it plays on a lot of weird, like these are hipsters, and like they roll through, and like one of them will use like a record player and like vinyls as their weapon. And one of them, I think, has a guitar and stuff. It's a very interesting.
I get a very Beautiful Joe feel from it, from the art style.
Yeah, I guess definitely the proportions of the characters. But it's an interesting little way, and the way you move around the world is kind of interesting because it's almost like a somewhat Zelda-like setup. But the game does look really good. Another thing of interest on there is that we're finally getting episode 3 of the final season of Walking Dead, the Telltale series, which is now being handled by the new developer. But from everything we know, it's majority of the same devs that weren't able to necessarily find work. So that's good in terms of keeping the vision of it together. But it's interesting we finally get that. I wonder how on schedule we'll get 4 and 5. Because, typically Telltale had a bad problem scheduling.
I'm going to guess by the end of probably February and or March, but I guess we'll see.
I'd say March seems reasonable. 1 a month doesn't seem that crazy.
No.
Which is not even true of what Telltale's normally done. I mean, some of their games would take 8 months to fully come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
So 1 a month would not be awful. That'd be 5 months for a wait. That seems reasonable in my opinion. But I've never followed them necessarily. Like, the only couple I followed, I think, from launch throughout was Batman, Season 2, Enemy Unknown, and then secondarily the Guardians of the Galaxy one, and they were very, very far between and super far off. I bought Guardians of the Galaxy because I bought all the previous ones used.
Did you ever play through that?
Yeah, it was good. But I bought it. I bought everything else used that I bought, like Wolf Among Us and what was the other one? Batman. I bought not used, but I bought for $10 at Target, brand new. So I was just kind of like, well, I'm playing through these, but I feel like I'll buy this one because I enjoyed the last two and I haven't bought anything full price, so I'll support them. And then I ended up regretting that because I didn't play it until way later. Yeah. And it was just, and it felt like, well, I feel like I wasn't bummed, I guess, that I supported them. I was bummed that the support came at such a long waiting cost. And that's my own fault because I don't like playing those episodic titles as an episodic release. I wait until they're all there and then play them.
Tales from the Borderland was pretty good.
Yeah, it was. And that was another one. I played that one free because of PS Plus. So I guess I just felt like I
bought that like a month before it came out free. I hate it when that happens. But
that happened to me too.
Brett, why don't you go ahead and move on into the news?
Sure. Let's see. I think we'd also be remiss real quick if I didn't shout out the fact that Ace Combat's coming out. So you know what? Have fun with it, Ryan. I'm going to wait, look and see some stuff, and then I'm going to get it. I know that it's not necessarily super, what should I say? It's not trying to be a simulator. It's more of an action game, but I've just never played the franchise. So I will look and see. I will see how well you respond to it, and then I might pick it up whenever I have a chance. But this is a bad month for it, is all I'm going to say. First thing on the list, though, and this is a great one, Sony announced that 91.6 million PS4 units have now been sold, and that's up from the 86.1 million they had last November. So, put that in perspective, that means that they sold 5.5 million units over the holiday season, essentially across a little over, a month and a half. I imagine that's in really big part to the $200 Spider-Man Slim bundle that they did during Black Friday that literally sold so quickly and then so bad that this is how you know when things go crazy. It sold so quickly and so crazily that there were people trying to scalp them the next day for double the price.
Yeah, human scum.
Yeah. Oh, man.
When you see like people with like a buggy full of 10 or 15 of them, it's like, really?
Yeah, and I thought it was I don't recall seeing anything that even gave a limit.
That's
normally
up to stores.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I thought,
and most stores, like I did hear stories that people were told to put back all but 2.
Yeah, 2 seems to be usual. It's
2
like,
is
well,
fantastic.
maybe you're buying one for you and your kid.
Yeah,
or,
it makes sense.
Each of your kids.
Yeah, but people who buy 15 of that kind of stuff, that whole like I'm gonna buy it up then resell it culture is one of the worst.
Well,
ones.
I mean, it obviously it helps PlayStation reach numbers like this because they may not. I mean, don't get me wrong. At that price, I imagine it would have sold ridiculously.
Yeah, but when you think about it too, that would mean that this would be an artificial number.
Well, it's not an artificial number because they will eventually go out to hands. But I do get what you're saying is that there's a chance that these sit for a little bit.
Sitting with 20 PlayStation 4s in their room right now.
Yeah,
just waiting to sell them.
Slowly pulling the price down. Because think about it, if you got it at $200 plus tax, let's just say $220. 10% tax rate is about the highest I've ever seen, and that's what we have, 10.25.
They'll probably end up selling it at like $250.
Honestly, because you have to deal with shipping as well. If they sell it for $300, they're probably okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you could still buy new ones for $300.
Yeah,
in a store and I still see those Spider-Man ones everywhere.
Yeah, I know. That's what's
ridiculous.
It's really interesting. But then again, those were, I think, the original Spider-Mans. I don't know. Our area is also weird. You don't see people necessarily scalp as often in our area as you would in bigger cities. So,
which is good.
But anyway, let's see. To put that in context, because I thought this was really cool, it's getting very, very close to breaking into the top 5 consoles of all time. So just to kind of go through those, right now the Wii is sitting in 5th place, all right, and that's just at a little over 101 million. So I would imagine that it's very possible, though I'm not necessarily sure. And so follow me here, and I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on this. How likely, and we've seen people on Discord give their thoughts too, and I'm really a little torn. How likely do you think it is that they might be able to break 100 million units before summer, or at least essentially by E3 time, June? If you think about it, we're at 91.6.
There's no
so they
big
need to sell
exclusives
somewhere in
coming
the
out.
vicinity of 8.5. There's Days Gone is the only notable one.
That's not going to sell that many
And
consoles.
that's exactly, see,
Absolutely
at least
not.
At launch, it's not for sure. But if it has
That game's not even going to be a contender to buy a PS4, in my opinion.
well, I mean, yeah, but we don't know. And that's essentially what I mean. And don't get me wrong, I think the game is going to be good. It's going to be good enough, but it's obviously doesn't have the same weight as things like Ghost of Tsushima do.
Yeah. Last of Us 2.
Yeah, and now what's also interesting about that is that by the end of the year, I think there's no doubt that it'll break 100 million. There's no way it wouldn't. I mean, this will be the year it breaks 100 million.
It's pretty impossible at this point.
But I think that the reason that I'm a little torn on this, and we've talked about this a number of times, I think it's possible, but it would have to be because of a lot of third-party, really smart marketing. So if they get the marketing with, which I don't think they will, but let's say they get the marketing with Anthem, which I'm pretty sure has already been announced to be Xbox, right? I know that Metro marketing is with Xbox.
Yep.
So that means 2 of the biggest third-party things that are happening in the first part of the year are going to be Xbox. But let's just say they get a couple of great third-party marketing exclusives, and they really push home like they did with Red Dead, which helped them obviously jump a lot from the time that they announced back in June that they were like 80-something million and got them up to 86. It gave them like 5 million in a short period. That wasn't holiday season necessarily. So if they're smart and they try and couple with the right games, third-party wise, and they get that out of the door, there is a chance that they'll see burst in sales because of those based off the reception of those games. So that could happen. Days Gone, let's say it does come out and to everyone's like crazy, and don't get me wrong, nobody's saying it's going to be a bad game. I've really not seen that.
No,
I'm just saying most people are saying it's just going to be a solid game, but it's not going to have the same exclusive. It's going to, and this is almost going to sound derogatory, but I don't mean it that way. It's going to fall more in line with what you saw out of the Order. It's a great exclusive or a good enough exclusive, but it's not necessarily this. Well, it's a reason to buy the console.
Yeah, you're not going to see people all over Twitter, hundreds and hundreds of people hyping it up like they did Spider-Man.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not Spider-Man. That's
Yeah. So that's.
But I think
you're not even going to see numbers comparison to that to Horizon.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. Horizon was a pretty interesting idea.
So it's a very
whereas this is a little more
it's
safe.
not going to be it's not going to be impactful to the sales that much. Like it's not going to convince people to go out and buy a PlayStation 4.
At launch, I'm with you, but I do think that there's a chance that the game reviews so super well.
It depends on if it reviews so
exactly
super well. Though.
Exactly.
Like,
That's what
I
I
don't
mean.
think it's going to review that well. The last time we saw it, there was glitches and bugs and clipping and all kinds of bad stuff about it.
I guess I don't remember that, but
yeah,
I mean,
it looked pretty janky. There some of the animations weren't as smooth as they could have been, and which it was alpha build.
Was it during the Game Informer open month spiel?
I don't think so.
Because if it was, that would make sense. Because I didn't watch most of that, but I've watched obviously the.
Did Game Informer do the 15-minute things?
Yes,
that might have been it then.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think if it was them or not.
I think it was because the only other 2 times I've seen it, obviously, and because we talked about this before, we try and give ourselves enough information to try and realistically talk about things, but also because of the way we are, we like to not give everything about a game away. So in that effort, I don't think I saw that. The 2 times I saw it on PlayStation show floor, which would have been far more polished because it's really going out. Even though I think the Game Informer would be pretty polished. I mean, the Game Informer is a big magazine, and the whole point of an open month spiel is to do that.
Fact checking real quick.
But anyway, let's say that it reviews incredibly well, right? And it gets such good word of mouth that it does pick up, and they get, let's just say they get another 1 million out of that. There is a chance that by the time June hits, they could hit that number. I'm more curious, though, and this is something that's going to affect how much farther along it gets up this top 5 chain by the end of the year, of what is exactly going to happen. Have you seen, Alana Pierce from IGN, you know what I'm talking about? I think Australian girl.
She actually just joined Rooster Teeth, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. Okay, she tweeted that she's been told by a number of people that the plan is for The Last of Us 2 to release in 2019. Now, as I've said before...
Why would she know that?
I mean, she was an IGN. She was a big, in the games
Does
media.
anybody at IGN know that though? I mean, I didn't think people at IGN just knew like when window for games releasing.
I mean, they talk to developers. It could be small things that they said behind.
That seems like that's some real bad red tape to cross.
I mean, she said it's subject to change, obviously.
That still seems like that's some real big red tape to cross.
That's really not that weird for the games media, man. You think about the stuff that Jason Schreier's done and talked about.
Well, I know that some of the stuff he's done is red tape. He's a good guy at everything. And I'm not saying Alana's not a nice girl or whatever, but I'm just saying like that sounds like that's like they could lose you a job.
And if you really think about it, she's not in IGN anymore, so it doesn't really matter. And these may just be friend things. But anyway, she tweeted that this was coming. The plan was for it to come this year. So originally I said if of the big three that we have right now that we don't quite know about, the big three being, at least I think for most people, is going to be Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Death Stranding. So of those three, I was originally saying that I don't know, like of them all, Death Stranding seems like a shoe-in because everything that we keep hearing about, it seems like it's entering its final phases and ready to go. So I do think there's a very high chance that maybe even somewhere around summer we get Death Stranding. Now, the other side of things is, of the other two, I've seen certain people, and definitely I think World Den was even one of them, say that he thinks there's a chance that Ghost of Tsushima would release before The Last of Us Part 2. And looking at the way the two have been presented, I feel like that's not necessarily a safe way to look at it. I feel like the more obvious answer would be that The Last of Us 2, because it's been given the only thing that neither of these games, actually no three of them, have been given the 1 month, the whole month-long Game Informer presentation that we saw happen for God of War,
Days Gone,
Spider-Man, and Days Gone.
Yeah.
All right. Now, those are two games that we obviously already out, and then one that's coming out pretty soon, and was supposed to be out sooner than it even is now. But the others, it makes it hard to, so I think in these coming months, if we get...
It was Game Informer, by the way. I just found the video. It's a 30-minute video on YouTube. And you can see what I'm talking about. There's parts in that video that look off, and there's parts in it that... I don't have enough time in the episode, obviously, to go through and get timestamps, but there's times like when the frames drop really, really bad, and there's times that when there's clipping really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then there's... What is it called? Like whenever... character collision. I'm like, when something runs into you or you run into it, it looks really janky. But then again, it's alpha footage. But you don't see a lot of people talking about Days Gone the same way. I don't think Days Gone is going to be a system seller.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that unless it reviews really, really well, which I know that it's not a really unpopular opinion right now to say that it's probably going to get around 8s. Nothing much too higher.
Yeah. I mean, I could see 8.5
from what we've seen and from just what it is. But I don't see it stepping into the 9 realm and 10 realm of things. And if it does, I mean, I'm good for it. Like, I'm going to buy it eventually. I'm not buying it on launch because there's too much crap coming out of this year that I got to get to.
Reasonable.
But I don't think that it's going to have the same impact. Now, if it sells really well, I still don't think that that game alone is going to be the system seller. It's going to add the game to the repertoire.
But let's
of all
just say it adds
games.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Let's just say it adds $1 million system, which I don't know how realistic that is.
People are going to buy a PS4 for that.
But let's just, okay, here's the flip side of it, right? Let's say that Days Gone is somehow the catalyst for people who have for some reason been holding off for PS4 Pro to give them way more games that they have to see the benefit from, and that this is the game that makes people who already have a PS4 upgrade to a PS4 Pro. It still counts as a system sell.
That's dangerous.
What do you mean?
If it works so well as a catalyst, I'm going to assume you mean that it's going to run better.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, more than anything, I think that some people I know, and some people have already crossed that line,
sounds
right?
like it's forcing you to buy a PS4 Pro to get the best experience.
No. I don't mean in that sense. I just mean like you have the two and it runs better, but you want to play it at its absolute best, right? And then there's a couple of people, or, let's just say the number of people. The game's going to sell 1 million. I don't doubt that any number. I mean, the order.
I'm talking about 1 million. I'm talking about 1 million PS4s.
Sure, I know. And that's where I'm going at. So I can go ahead and say the game's for sure going to break 1 million. All right. The order broke over 1 million.
Yeah.
And despite being reviewed poorly.
Yeah, even stuff like Nier's up in 3 millions now, I think.
Yeah, now that's over time. But I'd say that, there's a chance that we see Days Gone hit somewhere in the vicinity of 2 million around launch. Now, if that's first month, who knows?
Launch window.
Now, we'll say... What I'm getting at there is, let's say there's people who did this with God of War. There's people who did this with Spider-Man, where they kept holding off because there wasn't enough games that had pro support that they felt like it was a justifiable thing.
I don't think that's a catalyst by any means.
Hold on. And the other flip side of that is that it becomes a catalyst not only because there's people who might have gotten 4K TVs for Christmas who didn't have one prior, and they see Days Gone and they see this and they see this open window right here to upgrade, experience Days Gone at it should be its best, and also utilize their TV to the best of its ability. Now,
the thing is, though, is that Days Gone is not going to be the catalyst for that, because there's so many other games that we already know are good that are out that take advantage of PS4 Pros.
Sure.
That they would
I'm not saying it will be the only
for.
catalyst, but it will be a catalyst.
That's a weird thing, though. And
and I'd say this just to back my point up a little more. I think that these Sony first party games always utilize the Pro so much better than any of the third party. Red Dead Redemption being a big example. It looked maybe better on Pro.
The HDR was kind of messy. Wasn't
the HDR wasn't even real HDR, and they still haven't fixed that. So it actually looked worse when you turned HDR on. So my point being is that we can't say that Anthem, Metro, and all these other games are actually going to utilize PS4 Pro in the same way that Days Gone might, because I mean, some of the absolute best showings of what the PS4 Pro can do, actually all of the best showings of what the Pro can do, have come from the first party stable. So that being Horizon looked notably better on PS4 Pro and ran noticeably better, and the HDR was beautiful. You saw that with God of War,
Uncharted 4.
You saw that with Uncharted 4.
Spider-Man.
The exclusives are absolutely the ones that have the bust. So if you look at that,
why, which is what makes this the least likely game to force you to buy a PS4
Well, that's
Pro.
why I say that this might be a catalyst. You have that whole catalog of games that's already happened to, and maybe you didn't have a 4K TV at that time. You got one at Christmas because they were very cheap this year, and they're still cheap, as you were looking at one earlier, right?
Like $300.
So for people who are getting 4K HDR TVs this year for the first time and have a base model PS4 or a Slim either, and they see all these games, and I'm not saying that Days Gone will be the total catalyst, but it'll be one in the chamber.
To me, it's very unlikely that it's going to be the one to force them to get
it won't be the one, but like you say, it's the exclusive that'll probably be the biggest show of what the PS4 Pro can do this year,
the amount of people
versus all the other games.
The amount of people that's going to buy a PS4 Pro to play that game at its Pro enhancements is going to be less than 10.
Less than 10 people?
Less than 10 people. There's not going to be...
I disagree.
You really think people are going to go buy a PS4 Pro
I'm not
to
saying
play this game?
in the droves, but I guarantee you it's more than 10, because you don't realize...
I'm not seeing excitement for this game anywhere.
Hold on. I think you are slightly discounting too much. I get that you're saying you are correct very much so in the fact that it's not as hyped as The Last of Us.
Okay,
it's not as hyped as Death Stranding.
For it. I don't see Twitter ads for it. I don't see anybody talking about it on Twitter. I don't see anybody talking about it on Reddit ever. But a month and a half to 2 months before Spider-Man came out, it was nothing but Spider-Man.
Well, we're also
memes.
3.5 months out, or 3 months out.
Right, but I'm still
so by next month, if that doesn't change, then there's a little bit more.
There's still no hype for this game, even when there was hype for Spider-Man when we knew Spider-Man was coming.
But Spider-Man's also a huge multimedia. I mean, literally multimedia franchise.
But you could say that about any first party PlayStation 4 game up to this point, except for like those like of Horizon, which still had way more hype than this did months before launch. The Order, same ordeal, which is why I think a lot of people felt betrayed.
Drama got it though.
No,
at the same time,
I think people felt more betrayed, let down by it than anything else. But I think that it is the classic case of like this game is going to come out with a very much of a B feel to it more than anything. It's not going to be the system seller. It's not going to be a console seller. It's going to be one of those that's like, for those that have PS4s, it's going to supplement their library to be a good game for it. It's not going to be one that I'm going to go out, that a person's going to go out and seek a PS4 to buy with that only in mind.
Yeah, and not an individual game. And I will say that, but it's one more in the slew of exclusives. But even then, I'm just saying that I think but
it's not even been announced it has PS4 Pro support.
Yeah, it has.
When?
Dude, they announced that it was running on PS4 Pro the first time they showed it. They said running on PS4 Pro.
But the specifics.
Yeah, no, they haven't gone into that, but they didn't do that on anything until about a month out from release. We didn't know about God of War's specific PS4 Pro enhancements until some point in time, about a month and a half before the game. But my point being is, you do not think it's fair to say that you're being slightly hyperbolic in the fact that you think it's going to be 10 that buy it. It's not necessarily even that it's going to be something we can check easily, but it comes to the point that essentially without being able to check, I guarantee you at least 1,000 people will upgrade at some point in time, not necessarily only because of that game, but with that game in mind of seeing the benefits of how it runs on PS4 Pro. I think you're just a little too excessively discounting the hype for the game, because there is some.
There's some,
obviously.
But do you think there's that this game?
Well, I mean, but 1,000. Do you really think 1,000 consoles of a PS4 Pro is not going to be
Do you
realistic
think
for people
1,000
doing
people are
that.
going to go buy a PS4 Pro for this one game?
I'm saying with this game in mind of the
No,
enhancements.
I'm talking about as the
even
game
for the one
to
game.
force them to buy the game.
Yeah, I would more than 10, absolutely.
Because that's an unreal thing in real
more
life.
than 10, absolutely.
You don't think about that in real life. Like,
I mean, I specifically bought a PS4 Pro in mind with making sure, and I mean, I get your point.
but you
with
had a
Horizon
collection
in
of
mind.
games. But you had a collection of games in the back of your mind that
Sure, and
I'm
that's
talking about one game.
Yeah, but that's never going to be the case because the other group of
That's what it
games
started
already
out
exists.
with.
Though.
You said that somebody may want to get this game and
As a
get
catalyst, but that means only in the fact that they are, and I said it from the very beginning, that the catalyst meaning that this game would be on top of everything else going, well, you know what? This game's coming. I actually am excited for it, and I want to play it at its very best. I got a 4K TV this Christmas, and I have all this backlog of games that I've been
takes
playing.
me back to what I said, though, is that there's going to be less than 10 people that are going to buy this game solely for the PS4 Pro.
But nothing can ever be solely for. That means that somebody literally lives in a shell of gaming, doesn't know shit else about.
No, that means that somebody who's not really into gaming but thinks this game looks cool, so they're going to be like, I'm going to go buy a game for this. And then they're like...
a PS4 Pro.
And then,
but if they're not into gaming and they're doing that, they're not going to buy a PS4 Pro anyway, unless they're just like one of those people that got money, aren't into gaming.
But if it was Spider-Man coming out and you're like, I have this fancy 4K TV in my living room, I don't play games this much, I might get a 4K or the 4K PS4 player.
Fair enough. And I mean, and that's still not for
Horizon
one game
can be the
necessarily.
same thing.
Spider-Man probably of
No,
all the things.
I'm talking about the aspect of not people who are not playing games that much, that see a game they like.
Even if you see that
want to play the game that they want to get in 4K, and they have the extra money to spare for it.
I get your point.
Because
now,
there are people
Spider-Man is the only game, though, just to go to what you're saying, Spider-Man is truly the only game that would happen in, where people who, because
God of War.
It already swings towards, hold on.
God of War, they could have not played, they could have not gotten a PS4 this gen, and then they saw God of War, and they're like, you know what? I don't play many video games, but last time I played a video game, it was God of War. I'm going to buy the new God of War, and then they get there, I'm like,
it's
hey,
possible,
you could play
because
this.
it's a franchise. It's possible, sure. But the game that's the most likely to actually do exactly what you're talking about, one game making you buy not only a ridiculously priced system if you don't play games that often, is Spider-Man. And that's realistically because Spider-Man has the backing of Marvel, which is not only big in the multimedia.
That's why I said less than 10 people are going to solely buy PS4 for this one game.
But I'm really not even, what I'm arguing is that that's a stupid way to look at it, because very few people are going to ever buy something in a vacuum like that. That's just not the way that most consumers look at things.
I know people that do that dumb stuff. I'm not going to say them on the podcast. You know them too. We know mutual people that are that financially make very dumb decisions.
I get that, but like I say, majority of consumers. I'm not arguing that someone's going to literally look at Days Gone and be like, "Wow, that's so amazing." I don't play games, but this game makes me want to spend thousands of dollars.
But the whole transpiring of this conversation started off with: do you think that we're going to sell 1 million consoles because of Days Gone?
Well, I'm saying potential. Now, of course, that's swinging high.
In my opinion, no.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely,
and
not.
That's fine. But your 10 is the only thing I took a real problem with, because that's just being like, no one cares about the game.
There's not going to be 10 people that are going to buy a PS4 Pro specifically for that one game.
No one's going to buy a PS4 Pro specifically for one game outside of maybe Spider-Man.
But it happened so many times before, though. I've seen people say Horizon caused them to get a PS4 Pro.
But you're looking at the statement in a vacuum. You're telling me that people literally don't play these games. These are people that go, Horizon again was the catalyst on top of looking at these other games that are great that I've already played. But you know what? Not only will I get to play Horizon, but any other game that's going to be pro supported. I
work with someone who literally bought a 4K TV for Horizon and
awesome.
a PS4 Pro.
But that is not common, and that is very uncommon. And when I say, I'll say this.
But I'm talking
when I say hyperbole, I'm being hyperbolic and saying absolutely no one does that. That's obviously not true. There are people who make really what we would consider
wild decisions.
Improper, wild decisions. But I mean, my general point is that even when you see, you can't just look at a comment on the internet or a short conversation when somebody says, "Oh yeah, Horizon was what made me want to buy a Pro." That's not, I guarantee you, most people, and that's why I say most, the majority, even if that means 60% versus a 40%, but the most people are going to be going, well, Horizon made me want to buy one because it was finally like, well, not only do I get to play Horizon at its greatest, I also get to play all these other games that already exist.
But the argument is null in any specific game title, because you could use any specific game title.
Yeah, and that's but that's exactly what I'm saying is you can use a game title, one that you're excited for, that's coming up around your thought of already buying a Pro, and then going, not this game, and then these other games or whatever are all going to be one reason as to why this system is going to be even more justifiable on top of the mountain of games that already support it.
I find it funny that with Anthem, Kingdom Hearts, everything that's coming out this year, people there's going to be.
And I'm not saying that being the only game, but there are people, and Kingdom Hearts is so close that I'm actually kind of not talking about it. Anthem is reasonable. I mean, it comes a little bit later.
Quarter.
Yeah, sure. Like, you can say first half of the year if you really wanted to, because I mean, you could talk about other things that are coming around April. Though I think April is when the slowdown happens from releases. There's a lot of stuff coming in the first 3 months of this year.
I foresee this game selling 1 million. I don't see this game selling 1 million PS4s.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that was potential for it, and that is also in the framing of, and maybe I didn't do a great job of saying that, but that was in the framing of
almost
if the game gets great,
people already have one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But if the game gets really great word of mouth scores, the reason that you might be able to get closer to the 1 million mark would be people buying a PS4 because they want.
That's
these
not what
games.
it was. Closer, yes, I understand that. Not 1 million at the gate, though.
Well, sure,
or not 1 million because of word of mouth on this one game.
Sure,
but getting closer, yes, I do agree with that.
But I mean, I even said,
but that wasn't the question.
I said possibly 100 million.
Yeah,
but we're spending too much time on this.
We are, but yeah, absolutely no way though.
Okay, well, back to the other thing of the big three, real quick, and then we'll move along because we spent long on this.
Welcome to the Days Gone podcast.
Do you feel like there is a chance that 2 of those 3 games are coming this year specifically, or potentially even all 3? And if so, when do you think it? Because originally, I was one to say that. I'm going to tell you why and then see if you either agree or if you have a different thought on it, because originally my mindset was around the idea that you've traditionally, for the past 3 to 4 years, you've not seen Sony release anything pretty much after September. Maybe a little bit in October, but for the most part...
February and March has been their sweet spot too, which this year is kind of... There's nothing.
But that's the reason that there's a flip. So originally my mind was, well, why would Sony release those big games against competition in the fall that the third parties are going to have? Well, the thing is, a lot of the third party games that were going to be in the fall this previous year are coming early this year instead. So what you're seeing happen is that instead of Anthem, which would normally be a game that you'd look at and go, well, that'd be a fall release, a game like that. But that's
holiday seller.
But it got pushed into weird systems. So I think if you look at how many games are coming this year, be it from exclusives against Microsoft, if you see it from third parties like what you're saying with Metro Exodus and Anthem and Ace Combat and Kingdom Hearts and all these other big publishers releasing their big games in the first quarter of the year instead of the last quarter of the year, that makes more sense that Sony would actually have a great window to go and put these games out in the fall without having as much of a competition factor with the third parties. So what you end up happening is there actually is a chance that you could see, Death Stranding come out, let's just say June, July, maybe August. Last of Us Part 2 come out maybe August, September, October.
I still don't think Last of Us is a 2019 game.
I mean, reasonable enough, and that's what I was getting at. So, which ones do you think? Do you feel like Death Stranding is a guaranteed shoe-in for this year?
I feel like Death Stranding, if it's going to come out this generation and not PS5, it's going to be this year. I do feel like,
and I feel like Sony would not let him say that it was a PS4 game this whole time.
If it wasn't,
and seeing it running on, and that's the other thing that's important is the
PS4
game has
Pro.
been seen running on a PS4 legitimately.
Yeah, so I do think that Last of Us will be February next year, February, March.
Do you think there will be the intention for it to release this year with it being pushed back like the first one was and like Uncharted was?
No. I think that it will be announced
I really
with
believe
early 2020 date. And I do think that Ghost will be a fall 2020 game.
I actually am in summer to fall in agreement of if that happens.
Fall. Like anywhere between, I'd say May, September.
Well, here's where this gets a little stickier. And why I think it's such an interesting thing. There have been a lot of, and don't get me wrong, you can't really look at these things and listen to them and think that they know exactly what they're talking about, but there have been a number of analysts who have said that from everything they're seeing right now and the chances of what's going on and what you're looking at with Sony, that it's very, very likely we'll be hearing about a PS5 some point in time in 2019. Now, depending on when that is when it starts to get really weird as to where these things go on.
Where would it be, though? Would it be similar to the PS4 and be more of a corporate meeting that we get access to, or because there's no E3?
Yeah.
There's no confirmed PSX, which I'm going to say there's not one.
Yeah, but to be fair, PS Vita and PS4 were both announced at their own individual events.
Right, yeah.
So it would make sense that Sony would do their own individual event.
And they don't typically do second-party, third-party announcements there, do they?
They will sometimes.
So that's where
second party for sure.
That's where we make it Death Stranding, possibly.
Well, and technically, Death Stranding is, for most intents and purposes,
second party
being handled as a first party, but it is technically a second party game.
Well, yeah, it's what technically makes it first party, I guess.
First party is when it's supposed to be an in-house studio making it. Second party is when you get somebody like Insomniac, and in this case, Kojima Productions, making an exclusive title.
With using an exclusive Decima engine.
Well, I mean, there's that, but it's really just that it's an exclusive game. So, like, Ratchet and Clank does not use some kind of PlayStation exclusive engine. It's just Insomniac's engine, but the
I guess that's true.
the game and the license are owned by PlayStation to make a second-party exclusive. And that seems to be the case with what we're seeing with Death Stranding. As far as I've seen, Sony will own the IP for Death Stranding. That's Sony's go-to calling card. If the game is exclusive on their console, they 9 times out of 10, really, I can't even think of an example of when they've let a game be exclusive to their console, to them as a whole. Now, I don't mean PC or anything else, not like Neo, but exclusive to them as a whole, where they did not own, and they published it where they didn't own the IP.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So
I would honestly say that, like, if we're gonna get that, we're gonna get it there. Because when you think about it, the only thing we have to look for this year, in terms of announcements for these, realistically, is towards the end of the year, unless one of these pops up in May or something, and it's like, hey, this is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think the other weird thing about that, and the reason that I'm more thinking that we get one of these games, and Death Stranding seems a big issue in as well, is that Sony had 3 notable exclusives and more, but 3 notable first or second party exclusives, because Quantic Dream is technically a second party exclusive in that situation. So, but they had 3 notable exclusives throughout the entire year. So when you think about that, the only notable exclusive they have this year, because there's things like Concrete Genie, and I'm not throwing any shade on them, but they are indie exclusives, and they're not looked at in the same way as what you see Sony do with its incredibly large AAA thing that it's seeing.
So you have the same outlook on them, on Concrete Genie, as I have on Days Gone.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a little, and that's why I think I'm a little more weirded out by the fact that you think so weirdly of Days Gone, because Days Gone is still obviously AAA.
Right,
whereas
and it's Ben
Concrete
Studio.
Genie is
we
like
haven't had a true Ben Studio game for PlayStation back in a long time.
Yeah, well, an original IP from Ben hasn't happened since Siphon Filter.
Yeah, so, and I do think that, like, don't get me wrong, you guys may think I hate Days Gone or whatever. I don't hate Days Gone. I just think
know you
that
don't.
I come across a lot of people who think it's going to be one of the most successful exclusives. That's just not the case.
No, but I expect
it's not the case.
I expect it to actually outperform the order.
I'm going to buy it eventually. I'm not getting it at launch because I'm just sick of zombies. And the problem is that it's going to come out, and then probably within 9 months or 10 months, I'll be playing Last of Us 2, which is then another problem, because no matter what, how I feel about Days Gone after playing Last of Us 2, I'm sure my opinion will sour a little bit more on Days Gone.
So you almost need to play Days Gone before The Last of Us 2 so that you don't feel like playing The Last of Us 2 and then going back to Days Gone will give you a lesser experience. I don't know if that's going to happen. They may be so different of games that it doesn't matter, because one is a true open world, whereas one is swinging more wide linear and with a very different structure. But essentially what I mean is that if Sony doesn't do anything outside of just Days Gone as a AAA exclusive this year, then what's going to happen with their year? Are they going to show that week of the year in the time where they're trying, the prime time for them to break the 100 million mark? Realistically, the way they do that is not only with Days Gone, but with the biggest titles they can get, like Death Stranding, and it's not even because of the game, honestly.
It's Kojima.
It's entirely Kojima. And I'll give you that. Now, we were talking about games that existed already before, that have already come out. Now, Spider-Man is very big. If we wanted to put something against Spider-Man in terms of the way the gaming community sees it, Death Stranding will be a thing for people who don't even own PS4s at all to go, I love Kojima games.
Or not even that, but I'm curious about what this is.
Yeah. So it's just, I think if you look at that, it starts to be a thing where 2 of those 3 games almost have to be coming out this year to give them 3 notable exclusives throughout the year. Because otherwise, how are they going to do it? How are they going to pull it off? Are they going to really?
That's the issue right now, though, is which ones are we going to get?
And when. Now, I think the biggest thing, like
and
we've
when
been
are they
saying,
announced?
Yeah, which that may be at the PlayStation event. They start the PlayStation event by going, hey,
which one?
We are here. Well, this is the hypothetical one that they use to announce the PS5, right?
Well, okay.
But the way they segue into this,
PSX, I'm like in November.
Yeah, the way they use
December.
The way they use to segue into this conversation or into this announcement is, we're going to be, we're here tonight to show you about the future of PlayStation. But before we talk about the future of PlayStation, we want to talk about the present of PlayStation and say that we are not giving up our support of PS4.
I can't wait for the
And we want to say that by saying that you're going to get these games. Now, they may not do that. Of course, they have the far easier way of going, hey, Game Informer, we want a month-long thing. We'll give you the cover thing, and then we want you to give the release date there and everything else. And that's very, very possible.
Yeah.
But so we could learn about it. What's really crazy is we could technically learn about it before the end of March. We could learn when both of those games are coming before the end of March, technically.
Yeah. So
it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we haven't really talked about that as much. We keep talking about what we think is going to go down, but
maybe that's for a full topic, because we've already talked about that for almost 40 minutes.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long. But it's been a long one.
Almost.
We're gonna move through the rest of it though. And that was your
so far. It's been about 40 minutes.
That was your little micro topic for the thing. Next up, Resident Evil 2. Like he talked about, the remake received a demo this last week called the one-shot demo, giving players just 30 minutes to get as far as they can. Once that 30 minutes is hit, players are given a new trailer for the game and a thank you for playing. But you are unable to play the demo again. Hence the name One Shot.
There's ways around it.
Oh, sure. But I mean, unless you're doing some crazy stuff.
It's not that crazy, actually.
Probably not.
I'll tell you off podcast. I could just pull up on Reddit real quick.
I'm sure it's probably pretty easy. But what I mean is, easy, if you're doing
you don't have to change regions or anything at this point. So it's something I'm probably going to be doing.
I'm not going to play the demo. I'm going to wait and let everything. I debated it.
Why?
Huh?
Because it's already a familiar game.
Well, there's that. And I mean, I get that point, but I haven't played.
In what?
I have not played Resident. It comes out before Kingdom Hearts, a week before Kingdom Hearts.
I was gonna say 2 weeks technically.
No, it's 1 week.
1 week. That's right.
May even be a couple.
For those
of days.
that don't know, I'm all thrown off on my dates because I'm on vacation, and I keep thinking today is the 20th, and I woke up today. I think it was like the 5th or 6th. So now it's like, what is
today? Is
the 13th.
Yeah.
So I'm
your time is
really screwed off.
But I will say, in regards to that, it's a game that I have played before, but I have not played since legitimately the PS1. I have not played Resident Evil 2 in over a decade. I don't remember it that well.
It's been about the same.
And the remake is doing some changes, the camera angles and everything. So I want it to be as fresh as it possibly can. And we talked about it on Twitter with a couple people. Shout out to Sean and Dan. They were talking about it. And originally I thought I was going to download it, but with the games I still have to play and try and beat, on top of that, I don't feel like trying to lower myself down with even taking 30 minutes to play a demo of something that I already know I'm going to get. Though I don't know if I'm going to get Resident Evil 2 day one. I don't know if I'm going to start playing it until after I'm done with Kingdom Hearts 3 because
there's a new triangle. There's a triangle square on the new Keyblade.
What? Yeah, that's the PlayStation exclusive one.
Hey,
I wonder if you flip it over if it's got the XO.
No, it's just triangle square.
Yeah, Square Enix hit us up and they designed their custom Keyblade. Next thing up, though, THQ Nordic continues on its IP buying spree and purchases the Outcast IP. So most recently, that was utilized in a remake that came out, I think, about a year ago, a little less than, of the original title, and that remake was called Outcast Second Contact, and that was for these current gens, like I said. So if you have any interest in that, go check that remake out. But it means that there might be a future for that IP. Next up, Saul, and I want to show you this because it's kind of interesting. PSVR is getting a new fantasy RPG that's built from the ground up for VR. Shadow Legend VR comes to PC, that being Oculus and all those PC VR systems next month, with a PSVR release to follow shortly after. It looks like right now they're aiming for April. And I feel like this is going to be the first real competition in this space, at least on PSVR specifically, that Skyrim has seen.
That a VR RPG that can compete on PlayStation.
And when I say built from the ground up, they account for so much more than trying to recreate Skyrim.
Can I move in the game around?
It looks like it, but all the gameplay they've shown so far,
in it, I'm done.
Well, see, we don't know about the PSVR one. That's the sad part, right? Is that right now, all they've shown is the gameplay from the Oculus version, which does allow free movement, obviously. But they may look at some of the things like Borderlands 2 did for PSVR and try and be that. But look, this is what I'd say. If they're trying to compete against Skyrim, which did find a way to let you freely move in the game, and they don't allow free movement, they're going to be taking a step back.
A step back far enough that if I had a VR, I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I know a lot of people have that kind of similar stance.
I'm curious as to what the game's going to cost, but when I say built from the ground up, there's things that they accounted for that when you go back and rework a game like Skyrim to be VR, that you're not going to do because it just doesn't make sense. But they can do when they're doing from the ground up and it's sensible. So that means like if you want to get a drink and say you want to go drinking, like you can do in all these games, you actually go to the keg and you turn the knob and pour the keg out. These are small things like being able to actually physically touch stuff, like you can pick up a pipe and put it in your mouth and smoke it.
So you are doing the actions that your character would do on its own once interacting with something.
Exactly. Whereas Skyrim limits you to where you're essentially only interacting in the way of what you would essentially do in first person anyway of that game. You're just doing it with your actual hands if you choose to use a motion controller. So that means primarily combat. Yeah. And it means that the rest of the way it doesn't feel the same. Whereas this is like, well, you're going to get an item, you're going to physically pick that item up. Like, there's a pipe on the thing, you can pick that pipe up. And now you could say that might be gimmick heavy. It may be trying to show that just to be gimmicky. But the gameplay actually looks pretty good. And the soundtrack is pretty cool.
When's it coming out? Do we have a window at all?
February next month for PC. April is the aimed at PSVR.
Wait, this game was built up for PSVR and it comes out later?
Built for VR from the ground up.
Oh, okay.
But it's coming out on both.
On the first part. Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say, that is
stupid, right?
That is ridiculous.
It would have been interesting to see PlayStation try and secure this. Actually, the fact that they didn't to try and secure it as an early release might be a negative against it. I don't know. We'll see about that. Next up, Ed Boon, the father of Mortal Kombat as you know him, went to Twitter to share the official cover art for the upcoming Mortal Kombat 11. As you can imagine, the cover features fan favorite and Ed Boon's favorite, Scorpion, against a hazy yellow backdrop with the classic Mortal Kombat logo. So if you're excited for that, go check it out if you've not seen it yet. It does look good, but you know, the last 3 games have had Scorpion on the cover. It's about time they show somebody else, in my opinion. Let's see. Next up, Kingdom Hearts. Speaking of that, the Twitter announced Kingdom Hearts 3's free game update schedule in a multi-part tweet. So on launch day, there's a day 1 patch that adds several data fixes and the memory archive mode that will be added to the game's title menu, and you can go to it anytime. The following day will unlock the epilogue video, which will require players to have completed the game to view. The 31st, so the next day, these are 3 days in a row, they will add a secret video and meet you have to watch it. You have to meet the same criteria for the epilogue, as well as certain criteria that will depend on the difficulty you selected when playing the game. So if you want to see these things and you don't want to miss anything out, and you want it to be in game instead of watching online, think about that when choosing your difficulty. Maybe not swing too low in case it makes it harder to watch this secret video.
Yeah, because there is no. Well, never mind.
We'll see. The tweet.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna spoil something about trophies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's because that's the only one I saw, and I was like, I didn't saw. Somebody told me.
I actually don't know what you're talking about, so I'm just gonna.
Well, no, like somebody told me that, and I was just like, "What did you say?" And he was like starting again, I'm like, "Shut up, shut up!" Like,
what did you say?
I purposely muted the Discord for Kingdom Hearts to avoid stuff like this, and like you're over here telling me trophies. Shut up.
Anyway, let's see. The last thing that they went on to do is that the tweet clarified that the ending of the game is on the disc with no need for an internet connection, but the pieces mentioned here, the downloadable content pieces, are DLC and will require an internet connection to download. So that means that sadly, and I kind of get this was a point of contention in our Discord to an extent. Some people, I think, took it as the fact that the true ending of the game would not be on the disc, which we are being told it is, and I figured that much. What's going on is that the epilogue that they're doing, and I'm going to give you their wording real quick. So what they said was that it would be content that will enhance players' enjoyment of the world of Kingdom Hearts, end quote. So essentially, this is the biggest problem here. What they're talking about, and this is what really worries me, Saul, the tweet goes on to describe the memory archive as a, quote, digest of the Kingdom Hearts story in the series up to this point.
So the videos that explain the lore that they said was in the game
are going to be added in a day 1 update and not on the disc. So anybody who does not have internet, it sounds like, from what they're saying, unless there's still a certain video, in terms of maybe there's one more of a condensed video that happens at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, even
and
if
then
it's
this
not,
one
that's not a big deal to me.
It's not a huge deal, but it does mean that for people, and I've seen a number of people who are saying they're going to jump into this title after only playing 1 and 2, that they are going to have, if they don't have internet, which
there's multiple.
Sure.
No, this is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about YouTube and stuff.
No, there's multiple ways around finding the full story that is not this game.
Sure.
There is no one to blame at this point.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying it would have been nice for them to have that easily accessible on the disc.
They have it easily accessible right now. They don't have to wait till the day it comes out
through YouTube.
This is what makes me mad. People are like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. What if I didn't have internet?"
I will say that it's not official. I mean, that means that the other options that you have are up to the person who made the video's interpretation to an extent.
Right, but there are so many people that have gone back, myself included, have gone back and like refreshed memory of certain games that I didn't play, or like Recoded. Like, I'm not about to play through Recoded. So like, I went through and watched a video on it. Perfectly understand Recoded now.
Sure.
I've seen so many people say, "What if we didn't have internet?" What if implies you have it. So shut up and complaining about it.
Well, even then, you say what if. The reason people use that terminology, just to go to their defense a little bit, is essentially because they have internet on their phone, right? Because obviously they're able to make these comments.
Yes.
But the problem with a lot of things is that just because you have internet on your phone, that does not mean that it's internet that you can actually use on your console or that it's good enough. Because you can say, well, the argument could be that you can make your phone your hotspot.
Then you're one of the like
Sure.
10 people in the world that are playing Kingdom Hearts 3 with only playing the first two that don't have internet that is buying this on day one.
Yeah, it's a very odd thing, but there are people doing
it's
now. Not that
people
particular
being
thing.
mad to be mad.
Yeah, I'll give you that a little bit.
I highly doubt this is a big problem. Everybody,
and I'll give you, I'll give you it in the sense of you're right. This is a little bit of outrage from people, and I guess I'm not.
You don't have to go watch a video. You can go read. You can
Wikipedia.
Even if your internet on your phone isn't good enough to pull up videos, you can literally just go read the summaries and be 100% informed.
Not,
it's the most irritating thing.
Yeah,
to me,
not 100%,
so
but informed to an extent to where the game would make sense to you.
Yes, I literally I saw a post on Twitter, and like nobody warned me that like I don't have a Facebook. And I assume because Facebook's somewhat toxic, but nobody warned me how toxic Twitter can be.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, Twitter is really toxic sometimes. So somebody posted a tweet saying, like, I will never buy a Square game or support Disney again because I do not know what I'm going into with this game. And I expected there to be these stories that are going to tell me what's going on. They're not in this game. And I don't have internet. And it's like, okay, how special are you that you are complaining about this on Twitter when you right now have means to go look it up yourself and you're relying on them to put it into the game for you on a third game in a series of 10 plus games already, and you're buying it on day one?
Yeah.
You're making the problem worse for yourself.
Actually, so another thing that ended up being
I'm sorry if I offended you during this rant, but like this rustles my jimmies. There's so many ways to go and find the story right now if you needed it.
Yeah, I agree.
This is not their fault for leaving stuff out for leakers. People already have the game, and they're worried about it. People aren't. You know why they didn't put this in the game beforehand? You know, like they added it out because they're like, well, if we keep all these separately, it's easier to add these all in. Mm-hmm. They're not worried about people leaking the videos that everybody already sees on YouTube.
True.
So like they could have technically left it in the game.
Now that's one thing. People being mad about the epilogue, which is going to be completely supplementary to the story and going to be something that's more about that leading into the next.
I would be angry if it was leaked.
Sure. Like, that's exactly what I mean. The reason that those were included as downloadable is because no matter what happens, game copies get out early. Copies for this game got out so early because of the guy who stole them from Dallas or whatever it was. Thank you.
That happened to Dallas?
If I remember right, I may be saying it wrong, but I'm fairly positive that was it. But my point being is that when these things happen, any game before it hits, and definitely a game of this stature that's been building to this for so long, when it happens, people who get the game early are going to be at risk for spoiling things unfairly to people who are just trying to wait and play the game when it's supposed to come out. So I'm actually with you. But what I was going to say real quick, and then we'll move along, is that in this case, I am there was a point of contention about subtitles in games in the Discord, and I actually understand that argument more than I understand specifically this one, because you are right. Even if you want to say that, I often come from the point of empathy towards people who do not have internet access for their homes.
I do as well, because it's a rough situation to be in.
Exactly.
With that almost seen as a utility nowadays.
Exactly. But, like we said, pretty much universally, and I mean this to a point where there are government-assisted cell phones. Almost everybody has cell phone with internet. So there is no reason that you cannot do something, like you said, be it reading, if you don't have fast enough speeds or whatever. There's a number of ways to get this info.
Yeah, the issue is that this isn't even only available through the internet.
Yeah.
You could, I'm sure if you went into GameStop, I'm sure you'd find somebody there on your visit that could help you run down you the story. I mean, not every time you go in.
Maybe.
Now think about it. You probably don't want to trust GameStop employees with some things.
Tell you some wild stuff.
We say that out of its history of our GameStops, not to insult GameStop employees.
Oh, if you went into GameStop,
well, Kingdom Hearts 3 was supposed to come out 4 years ago. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know we had a release date for that 4 years ago? It was a set-in release date. No, you didn't know that because it didn't exist, but we were told it was. But anyways, yeah, like to me, it's like I feel like it's a problem that is created upon itself, because this is the third game, the last game in the mainline plot. It is the 10th game, I think, or 9th game.
Something like that, yeah.
In the full-on series plot that is the conclusion. If I see your comment on Twitter, you have a means to internet right then and there.
Yeah.
To at least start or download a PDF file of it explaining everything. Those are available. I've seen those online. The full story that you can read through that somebody's made into a PDF. People are expecting these companies to do this for them. And I get it when it is a necessity. I get it when it would be the ending of the game, the beginning of the game. I get it for that thing. It
would be, I'm completely with you. It'd be a whole different thing if the legitimate ending of the game was not included on the disc.
Ridiculous. Because there are going to be people who beat this on day one.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. There's people who can power through it within day one, 24 hours of it coming out. I'm sure. If not, it'd be very close after.
Yeah. I'll say 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah, somewhere around that time frame. But I will say that, like, I'm not saying people that don't have internet are just like at a loss. I'm just saying that.
But they have some form.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas when we were talking about subtitles, it's like, well, subtitles in terms of why they should be in games, and I'm not saying forcefully, but it's because there are people who are deaf who can't do anything about it. There's a difference when it's people, realistically, if you're deaf, you can't just magically go hear something. So there's a reason there. But if you don't have internet, you can go to your local library and spend an afternoon looking at the Kingdom Hearts lore if you want the game that bad. It means that one group has a means to solve the problem at hand, and one doesn't.
Well, and then there's the third group that's mad that they have the means, but they're going to be mad because other people don't.
Yeah.
And that is outrageous.
Use a great word for it, outrageous, because that's exactly where I was actually going with this, is that it is a little unfortunate that it's not in the game for people that don't have internet. But
once again,
the bigger reason that it's unfortunate is it's unfortunate that Square did this because they're going to get the group of outraged people who are going to be mad at them over something stupid.
And they don't
That's
care.
actually what it comes down to.
They do not care because they are a
global company.
Yeah, they are a massive company whose cultures do not line up with ours.
Absolutely.
They do not care.
Yeah, I would imagine most Japanese people probably in this. Who knows? But I would imagine most Japanese people.
You're treading on some racist waters.
No,
first of all, say all Japanese people know Kingdom Hearts.
No, I was going to say that they would probably be kind enough from their culture that they wouldn't. Yeah, Saul. Anyway, what I was saying is that their culture would probably be as such that even if they got the game early for some reason, they wouldn't even leak it. For the most part, because they have a more respectful culture than we do. But who knows?
Well, there are people that literally buy games early to leak them on purpose.
Yeah, I know.
There was a guy on Reddit that did that specifically for Red Dead, and he did an AMA for it. People asked him why he did it, and he was like, I don't do it to hurt people. He's like, I use it as a weapon in my arsenal to where if you are annoying me or if you are getting on my nerves about something, I'm like, well, here's the ending to Red Dead 2. And he's like, I've done it under multiple accounts on the subreddit before that have been banned.
But
surprisingly enough, that account did not get banned until I guess after the AMA, because now I can't find it.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating. So I'm guessing that he ended up getting banned.
Even then, though, the downside of that is that you inadvertently hurt other people. You inadvertently ruin the experience of other people.
I should have clarified he PM'd to those people.
Oh, okay.
Which is like the worst way to get a spoiler, because I've had games like that spoiled for me too. Because you don't expect a spoiler to pop up in a message.
But if those people were being that annoying, what they may do as a thing is be mad and then be like, well, you know what? I'm going to spoil it for everyone else. Which, that's what I mean, is that people getting games early is a problem that you can't get around it, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and to be fair, there could have been worse left off of a game. I'm not saying that it's the best policy in the world to do this, but I'm saying that there's no need to get outrageously upset that this is happening. This is literally a prologue to the game that is going to, or prologue, yeah. It is going to, not even prologue really, but it's a bonus part of the game that didn't have to be included in the first place.
Yeah, they really didn't.
And that the only reason people are saying that they're going to hop onto this game now is because that is included into this game. So like the same people who are saying like I'm hopping onto this game and not playing all the others, is they're doing it because this is included.
I'm with you, but I will say this. I'll play devil's advocate real quick and do specifically this. Do you remember when the Kingdom Hearts fan base just went jack crazy because oh Lord, what is his name? Angry Joe said he was going to review Kingdom Hearts 3, and people were saying he shouldn't because he said out clear that he has never played any of the other games in the franchise, or at least he hadn't played enough to where he'd understand what was going on. And people were worried, essentially the Kingdom Hearts fan base saying, well, you shouldn't do it because you're going to give the game a lesser score because you don't understand what's going on.
What does that score matter?
True, but this is what I will say. There is a group of people. Me and you are always of the mindset that the score ultimately doesn't matter. It's about what you like.
It's not even that. It's that if I go into a reviewer and like let's say I'm watching a Divinity 2 review, and the guy's like, I don't play RPGs that much. I play Madden though. And
then his score means
like,
nothing.
This game sucked. There's no footballs in it. Yeah, it's like, well, obviously I'm not going to pay attention to what he said. Now, any fundamental flaws that are in the game.
But what I'll say is I'll use that as a kind of segue into what it does do is that was ridiculous, right? There's no reason. He never said that he wasn't going to do a checkup on the story to make sure that he understood it as much as possible going in. I think what actually happened, if I remember, is he said he would try and do that, and people were like, try, you have to do it. Whatever.
It's really not a complicated story to understand. There's only like 4 character arcs that you really have to understand, and then there's a little bit of side stuff. excuse me, I actually explained it to Joe last night.
Yeah, it's not that hard. I think, like I say, if you can give somebody 10 minutes, you can have a pretty rough idea of
And
what's going on.
technically, 4 games is all you really need to know.
Yeah.
As of right now.
Well, Recoded coming up out of the blue is crazy.
Yeah, no, that's still a
data.
very easy thing to understand about that
But
game.
I think because the
There's
data
a castle, it's a computer. Characters in that game, they're a computer. One character's back, why is he back?
Okay, but real quick, what like the devil's advocate play is that essentially it's one more weapon in the arsenal of reviewers to go negatively against it, which, not saying for outer people, but for the way that companies try and look at the reception of games, they look at not only the monetarily sales, but how well it critically handled. So in the case that it's one more thing that people can try and use to knock a few points off, it's getting it that much further away from the game being reviewed as well and received as well critically as the company may have otherwise hoped.
To understand this, I guess I have to understand how a company would look at these reviews. Do they sit in a board of members and they go through the websites together? Do they send off somebody who is to look at these?
They use Metacritic as
right, but I'm saying, do they go do this together, or do they hire somebody to go through and look at Metacritic scores, and then do they hire somebody that knows whether or not these reviewers are credible enough? Because if a game gets Metacritic review bombed, then they see the user scores 1 and then the critic scores 10. Well, something's there.
That's why you have a weighted system on Metacritic, and where they do this thing, or I'm going to say weighted, but essentially you can't be a critic on Metacritic as a non-user level critic, but you can't be an actual critic.
You actually have to have, I think, some kind of form of credentials and or writing experience to be able to be a critic.
And they essentially look at your site and see how fair you've been, from what I understand. But so essentially, they shouldn't have to hire somebody to see if the reviews are reasonable, right? Essentially, what they do is they go, well, look, Metacritic goes ahead and does that. All they probably do is just have the executives sit there and look and go, okay, well, here's our Metacritic score. And then maybe look at a few of the common reasons as to why people say that they didn't like it, and then go, crap. But even then, I could see it being as simple as just saying, well, hey, the Metacritic score didn't hit our expectation. Doesn't matter the reasons why, it just didn't. And I think regardless, so the unfortunate side of that, and the way that the game industry works, is that it could end up hurting the team. And who knows? The thing is that it seems weird on that one, because like you said, it's not something they'd be worried about leaking. So why did they not do it? Was it because of time? And why did they do? Because it went gold forever ago. They could have waited another month and let it get.
Because I'm curious if the way that this in my head.
But it's a worldwide. That's fair enough. Real quick too, it's a worldwide release, so maybe it did need to go gold earlier. But go ahead.
But maybe it's something in my head that's a package. Like there's 3 packages we're getting, obviously, for the 3 days it comes out.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if it was just easier to supplement it as a package and not into the game. Maybe they thought about this after the game had. Maybe it's harder to implement into the game, into the menu during development than it is to add on into a patch or something. Which I don't know how that works.
But I know that they didn't think about it after, because they've been teasing this video for a while.
I'm talking about after.
And this is also speaking from the point that
general conception of the game.
There might still be something in the game that acts as a quick 5-minute precursor and everything, and that instead this memory archive is more of a deep dive. So if you really want to go into each story,
we fully don't know that well.
Exactly. You may be able to click in the memory archive and it say Kingdom Hearts 1, and you can click on it and it'll give you a maybe 8 to 10 minute synopsis of Kingdom Hearts 1, and then you can do that per Kingdom Hearts game. We don't know.
I have a kind of an unpopular opinion, but I think that not having internet is not an excuse to be mad at a company for including things in this day and age that require internet.
Yeah, because then it's reasonable for people to be mad that, and I mean, people were with Fallout 76, but then it's okay and reasonable in people's minds to be mad at a company for making a game online only. Well, if it's online only, it's obviously not targeted at you.
Yeah, it's not your game. This game is the 3rd game
in then
the
you can be mad.
That seals off a plot that is very highly convoluted. If you do not know it, then this game already was not meant for you to pick up and play and enjoy.
Then you can
this
be mad.
was supplemental for you. This is not something that should have been included. Or that something that is included, and that since you having to have internet, that's just one other thing to be mad at. But in reality, it's like, they didn't have to include this. This very game could have very well released strongly without that as a complete proponent. They're only doing that because they're with hopes that maybe you will be able to hop into this game, not even having played the series at all, and this will make you a fan of the series.
Yeah.
And it helps, of course, sell things too. When a game comes out and it's the 3rd one in the franchise, somebody's never played before doesn't think twice about getting it, because they're like, I've never played this series. I heard it's as complicated as Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
So then they jump in and it's like, well, one of their friends points out, well, there's a video that you can watch that comes out with the game that tells you everything you need to know. Oh, okay, then I might get it then. Or you can literally go to YouTube right then and there and look it up. And people are going to say, well, what if I don't have internet? I'm sorry. Like, that's not a problem that I can solve, obviously. That's not something that a company around you can solve. You can't be mad about that. You can't be mad when somebody says, like, look it up. Especially when you read these comments on the internet. It tells me that you have internet somewhere.
Sure.
And it may be limited. Sure. There's other forms of media than videos that can teach you things.
Exactly. You can read, and you can say,
That's all I'm saying about it, because I know I'm sure I'm going to get hate from somebody.
Well, it's going to happen. But look, what you always got to say is, like, where are we going to leave this cap? Because if you go, well, I have to use videos because I can't read. Well, I mean, I'm sorry if you can't read.
Well, I am sorry.
Exactly. That's what I mean. But it goes down to this level. And I'm not saying that people who can't read should be able to enjoy these things. But sometimes there always is going to be a barrier of entry. And if you start knocking at every one of these small ones, and it's going to eventually get to the point where the whole idea we've talked about a number of times, if you open the door a little bit, be prepared for somebody to kick the damn thing open.
In, everybody's going to come on in.
Because what happens is eventually you're going to make it justifiable for people to say that exclusives shouldn't exist, which already is a group of people that do this, because they say, well, if I own an Xbox, I shouldn't be excluded from playing the PlayStation games. That makes no sense. Okay, then that means that if a game comes out in general on console, well, I don't own a single console. Why should I not be able to play it? And now that's obviously going to the crazy extremes of things, but you start to move towards that. The more ground that we let people cede, even if it be on the internet, small outrage culture, the more ground that we let people cede for small things that really shouldn't matter as much as we make them matter. And that seems to be because apparently nobody else seems to think that there's anything else worth fighting for. We don't have to, as Joe Rogan always says, we don't have to go out and fend for ourselves, so we just look for things to be mad at all day long.
Well, see, and what I don't...
But it's that's all I'm getting out, and then you can say whatever. But yeah, it's just...
You know how many people...
You're going to open the door for ridiculous complaints.
It's hard. This is a hard comparison to make anyways, due to the nature of the internet. But, like, the amount of people I've heard complain about internet being a required in certain services outweigh the amount of people that have internet that still complain about it too, for those other people. Sure. And that's the big problem. Corey, a perfect example, didn't have reliable internet for a good while.
And I never really even heard him complain.
Internet. Yeah, it was more so like little nuances he could not do.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a complaint, more like, oh, I just can't do it.
But I've heard people with full-on internet connections complain for these people. It's like, if they don't have internet, and I'm not seeing these comments myself, I don't believe that you are talking for somebody else's behalf. It's like, I don't believe
being outraged for other people. Yeah, which I mean,
yeah, it's one of my biggest things in the world of like, I get that you like that there are certain things in the world that you think should work. And I get it. But like in this day and age, with internet being a thing, you cannot be mad at a game developer for requiring you to use internet in one or two proponents of the game that is optional. Not required, it is optional. That is a big problem.
Yeah.
If this was required, experiment. I would be a completely different conversation. Because if it was required to have internet to have the ending, absolutely atrocious. That would be a bad move on Square's part. That would be a bad look on Kingdom Hearts as a whole. Mm-hmm. But this is an optional thing that has been available since the day after Dream Drop Distance came out. And if you think about it, because there have been lore compiled after the last game that has come out that you needed to know about this entire series. Yep. Not only that, there's been collections available on PS3 and PS4 since
for you to catch up. Yeah, so the age-old excuse that people use of, well, I didn't ever play the other ones because they were on PSP and Game Boy and DS and 3DS, and it's like, well,
there have been collections.
Now we are.
Don't require internet.
Yeah, now we're here.
So it's the people who thought, I guess, like, oh, I never knew about this. I'm gonna hop into it because they have a video. Oh, well, I don't have internet. I don't think those people, I don't think there's a lot of those people actually.
Well,
I don't think there's a lot of people that never played the game before that was looking forward to this video to hear they needed internet and say, I don't have internet. Yeah. I think that's a low number too, but you never know.
All right, moving on to the next thing though. Let's see. Sony's strong year of exclusives throughout 2018, as we talked about, has landed them a strong presence as a publisher in this year's annual DICE Awards, taking place on February 13th. God of War leads the pack against all other games with 12 nominations, followed closely by Spider-Man at 11 nominations. And Red Dead takes third with a count of 8 nominations. That said, the final awards could swing any direction. So time will tell how these nominations play out. But hey, congrats to God of War and the team over at Santa Monica. Man, that's great. Same for Insomniac. Even though I don't think Spider-Man necessarily deserves the same amount of acclaim as I see it getting, I do think it's a great game. And good for them. Really just good for Sony as a whole for having this great stable of games. And of course, Red Dead coming out so late and getting 8 nominations, that's still great on them. And actually, it kind of goes against the idea that a lot of people have had that award things tend to swing more toward games that have most recently come out. Because they're more fresh on your memory. So it's actually interesting that God of War is doing so well, being the oldest game pretty much in the listing. So good for them. Next up, AC Odyssey, as we talked about earlier, what I'm playing, has received a slew of new features via its most recent update. The update adds a level scaling option to let players play the game without level in mind. So you can do it a number of ways. You can do light level scaling, where things can fall up to 4 levels under your level. You can do medium, where they can fall up to 2 levels under your level. Or you can make it where it's hard, or whatever their wording is. But essentially, everything in the game stays at your level at all times. Or you can go to default, where the game has its already predetermined levels and leveled areas, so that you can determine when you're ready to go into places. So that's one thing that they've added, in case you want to get back to it. The update also addresses an issue where players were missing their Odyssey arc, which is the primary game arc in the quest log, after you were doing a certain part of the game, and adds new content to the game and more. So it might be time to pick it back up or head back to it in case you've put it down or haven't grabbed it yet. It's a good way to be able to move through it a little quicker if you don't care about the wanting to do side quests to make sure your level stays up to meet the level requirements of the story mission. So something cool that they did. This one was wild. We talked about it a number of times that we thought PUBG would be coming, landing dead and falling on deaf ears on PlayStation 4. Apparently, we were incredibly wrong. And I've seen other people mirror our, expectations, and we were just all wrong because going completely against expectations, PUBG topped December's most downloaded games from the PlayStation Store, even ahead of Black Ops 4.
Yeah, that's stupid. And I mean that that's stupid numbers. They
yes. Did. You know what? I've been hard on the game for a number of reasons. I've never just said it's a bad game by any standard, but you know what? Congrats to them.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how it plays on PS4, because if it plays, or PS4 Pro, I should say, because if it plays well, I can get 1 or 2 people play it with me. I'll play it.
You might go back, yeah. Well, the thing that we thought was that the price point was going to be the killing point.
It's
because
$30. That's still, in my opinion, the killing point.
Sure, yeah, but that's
how much it is on Steam.
That's what we thought was going to be the biggest Achilles heel for, because you have Fortnite, which is a comparable game type for free, and then you have Black Ops, which is $60, but has other game types on top of being a very, very well developed game.
I've already bought it on on Steam.
Yeah.
So it's I don't really want to spend $60 over on this game.
Exactly. But that was very interesting. So if you had those thoughts as well, hey, or if you thought we were wrong the whole time, then congratulations, you knew. Next up, this one's also pretty interesting. I hadn't heard about it until I was doing this little news sweep. Long in development open world fantasy game Eastshade has a PC release date in February, with a console version, quote, soon to follow, end quote. The game sees players taking on the role, this is where it gets weird, of a traveling painter. So it's an open world game that looks gorgeous.
Yeah, I saw this on
and instead of killing
Twitter.
Anything, you paint.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
So where this ties into what you can do, it's not just a world where you move around and paint, even though it kind of sounds like that, but you can use your paintings to sell or trade to locals of towns to unlock secrets or gain items needed to solve obstacles and quests in the game. So essentially the painting acts as the pass-through for everything. So there's going to be puzzles in the game, there's going to be dialogue you got to move through in the game, and sometimes you'll need to give certain paintings or get different items that you get from trading these paintings to be able to use to solve these puzzles. It's a very interesting take on the idea of an open world fantasy game, or I'm not gonna say fantasy, even though I guess it kind of looks like it. It may just be a period piece, but go check out the graphics. I mean, it really looks very pretty, and it looks like it runs well, and this is probably PC footage, but if you like the idea of challenging normal game genres and doing something a little different and fresh feeling, then this is probably the way to do it. I mean, so go check it out, see if it interests you at all. Let's see, next up, during a live stream talking about the Fantastic Four making its way into Marvel's mobile games, they teased something fantastic coming to Spider-Man. So I would say they didn't go into what it was going to be. A lot of people are saying different things, but I think if you're realistically going to keep your expectations in check, expect a suit at probably most. But outside of that, maybe something small added into the game that acts as an Easter egg on top of a suit. Do not expect, even though we may get it, do not expect any kind of big story arc or another expansion. That's just very unlikely for something as culturally not as big as any other Marvel franchise that they could really try and pull into this. You know what I mean?
All the movies they've made have been pretty, and it's been Fox's fault.
Sure.
They haven't had Disney work on any of these movies to my knowledge at all.
They have not. Yeah.
But Yeah, maybe Disney should make. I think they make a good Fantastic Four movie.
Possibly.
I'm not gonna lie though, I like the first like 2.
They're not
The
awful.
first one in the Rise of the Silver Surfer. I was like 13 or 14 when they came out.
Well, Jessica Alba, you're young and your hormones are flowing. You're like, man, Jessica Alba's pretty. So it's enough to watch. But I haven't watched the newest one they did.
I was all about the Thing. No, yeah, I definitely have not watched the newest one, which is a shame because it's a shame that it exists because Miles Teller is a really good actor. And like I've heard such bad things about his performance in that movie and everybody's performance overall.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't one of the guys from, and I haven't seen Black Panther, but wasn't one of the Black Panther actors in that movie?
The bad guy, Killmonger, was Michael B. Jordan, who was Johnny.
Was he Flame?
Yeah, Johnny Storm. Yeah, Johnny Storm. So, and then Miles Teller was the main guy from Whiplash, which is an amazing movie.
Okay.
Something Bell. Jamie Bell was not Dr. Doom, but he was. Who was he? He was the Thing. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, was
but,
he? Well, regardless, I
he was
haven't
in
seen
Jumper. Nobody's ever seen Jumper before. That was a good movie.
Jumper was awesome.
Yeah. You never hear anybody talk about that movie.
I love that
was
movie.
Good. Samuel L. Jackson and Hayden Christensen, and they were teleporting. Heck yeah.
Well, see, everybody was down on Hayden Christensen because of Star Wars.
Yeah, what a thing that's progressed now because everybody loves the prequel trilogies now. It's like it's come full circle.
Which is good because I'm not saying the whole thing needs to be
you should never
loved,
bully an actor like that.
but it shouldn't have been as bad handled as it was in terms of the way people received him. That was early outrage culture.
I never understood the fully understood the amount of anger that was behind the prequel movies. But like,
I think it's that Star Wars had been around for a long time with nothing. This is not a movie podcast. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Next couple things, and we'll finish up the news. As Devil May Cry 5 is receiving a new demo for consoles on February 7th, a month before the game's early March release, which I think is March 8th. Rockstar, this is the last thing, has announced that Red Dead Online will remain in beta for a few more months as they work to update the game and bring it up to their standards and fans' expectations. With this announcement, they shared an outline of updates and what they're kind of wanting to do with the updates more or less than anything. But one of them is the long teased Battle Royale mode that they talked about well before the game came out, which is going to pit 32 players against each other in a free-for-all or various team formation. So this sounds like if you played the one from Grand Theft Auto Online, you've probably played what this one's going to be.
Did you hear, did you read Jeff Keighley's tweet about it?
No.
It should be called Cattle Royale. Cattle Royale. I love it.
That's good. You gotta love them dad jokes. Anyway, that is the end of the news itself before we move into the main topic.
And forget, there's no reader mail, so be sure to check out our Twitter and our Facebook group for those reader mail questions. It is now pinned to our Twitter for our reader mail tweet, so as long as that's pinned up there, ask us a question, and I still retweet it on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And don't forget that if you are a YouTube watcher, ask a question in the YouTube comments. If the channel likes your question, that means it's going to get answered. So feel free to ask us any kind of question, personal, gaming related, life related.
We have
advice.
one from World Den that we need to.
I know.
Okay, I didn't know if you'd added it.
No, yeah, I did.
Also,
I
if you support us,
I haven't added any of them yet, but I know what
if you support us on Patreon and we post there as well, if you ask us any questions on there, we will shout out that you're a patron and back us, as well as some other stuff that we are working on the Patreon backside regarding to reader mail, but we will get into that as we have more of an idea of what's going on.
But thank you guys for tuning in, and yeah, I was seeing if you'd catch the fact that we've been going for so long. We have not gotten to the main topic yet.
I know.
Donovan is going to love this podcast.
Well, and so will all the other people that like long ones. So here we go. Josh, Blake, all you, it's for you guys. That's what we did this for. Not really. It just happened. That's what we let it be natural as possible. So essentially, and I think this is probably the most obvious thing because it's one of the biggest things that happened. While Saul stretches, this week, Activision and Bungie both came out and announced that the long, what is this now? From 2010, so this 8-year partnership with Activision as the publisher of Destiny is no longer going on. In the split, Bungie will be retaining the rights to publishing Destiny, so they will be taking on not only developing it, but publishing it themselves. So a couple of things kind of tie into this, and I think that me and Saul agree, I know for a fact, on a couple of points, but I'm really curious as to where we see on other things. But
I think we agree on everything.
Before we get into those completely, kind of actually why this is even going down, there's been some problems at Activision from a number of people's opinions, and you look at the way that Activision's companies are going. Obviously, Activision had a great year with Black Ops 4. It was,
absolutely great year.
Yeah, so we saw them come up, and Call of Duty, which was on a downslope for a little while, and then started kind of coming back up with World War II doing very well, and then Black Ops 4 doing even better. They've had a good year with their own franchises, while Destiny has continuing on their side been considered a not meeting expectations, essentially, is the best way to word it, despite the fact that Forsaken topped September ahead of Spider-Man monetarily. And now that's really something to say right there. I mean, you know, that's amazing. And the fact that that kind of number for Forsaken's uptake is considered
a game that came back.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a true comeback story because a lot of people, including myself, stopped after the last expansion, which is typically where Bungie does well in, and that's where you'll come out with an expansion and you'll be like, well, this is pretty good, and you end up playing it up until just about the next expansion.
Yeah,
and you pretty much just
that's kind of the loop of that game.
Yeah, you're kind of done, which is what Black Armory is doing so well, is that it's really grindy to unlock the armories, but or the forges. But once you unlock them, they're fairly fun to do, and they're great to implement into your weekly stuff. So,
and what else is actually, even though this isn't necessarily about the topic, but as a real salute to Bungie and the way that they're thinking about these things, and I imagine this has probably happened in the idea before. It seems like this has been something a little bit long in the works. Right. But what I want to say is that the Black Forge, or Black Armory, and the Forges, one thing I like about what they're doing with the game is that they're not doing what they were doing before, where if you own the game but you don't own the newest update, then you essentially can't play the game. Yeah. This one is not true. I don't own the Black Armory yet, so it doesn't even matter that I haven't done it because I haven't bought it.
I forgot you got to buy it.
Yeah, and no, I'm going to. I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But essentially, it hasn't kept me from playing with y'all in any fashion.
Yeah, we played last night.
Whereas, what did we see happen on the very first expansion? They made it to where you couldn't get the platinum you couldn't.
That wasn't part of the expansion. That was part of an update.
Exactly, but the update launched alongside the expansion.
No.
So these were all in a weird thing.
I'm pretty sure that was a sandbox update. Like, they just changed things around and updated nerfs and buffs and stuff.
Well, it came the exact same day as Curse of Osiris. That's all I'm getting at.
There's no way.
Because people were talking about after Curse of Osiris, that was when
I didn't play up to Curse of Osiris though. That's the problem.
Yeah, but getting the platinum was originally not locked behind DLC.
That's what I'm saying. When it happened, I thought that update came out while I was still playing, and I didn't play all the way up until Curse of Osiris.
No, that update didn't come out until after we had quit.
Oh.
But regardless, they're doing better things, because before we saw parts of the game kind of locked out unless you had the DLC. So you couldn't get the platinum for the game because they removed it to where you had the ability to do nightfalls and stuff like that, and to do the raid that was required, you had to have the DLC. It was a very ridiculous thing. I think they've gone back and actually removed that block. But
I'm sure you still need the DLC to do the raid, though.
They have done a good job. They have done a great job of bringing players back, showing that they're at least devoted to try and keep players around in a number of ways. They did it with the Dawning. They did a good job with the Dawning. They've done well with their map of what they're planning to do with this by letting people continue to play the game without any weird arbitrary locks. So it seems like Destiny and Bungie Bungie for Destiny has been working towards something that is essentially building up to this for a while. They want to put the game on their own terms, and there's some good that comes to that. Some of how they were able to probably make this happen is that they have a Chinese company, I think is what it is.
Net Zero.
It's not Net Zero, is it? Net Zero is an online provider, but it's something very close to Net.
You're thinking about Netgear.
No, Net Zero was literally an old AOL-like thing.
I'm pretty sure. I thought it was Net Zero. But yeah, and that is something to be kind of worried about. You are right. Net Zero is broadband. But some people are kind of worried about that Bungie is now paired with this company, who is the same company behind Diablo Immortal. It is.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it is a very, and I don't mean this derogatory, but this is just what it's classified as. It's like they are a Chinese phone app game creator. They make apps and phones for games, they make apps and games for phones that are targeted for microtransactions. People inherently thought this was the worst news that you could see. That's just not the case. Bungie has already clarified that they are not working on anything Destiny related. What the game that Bungie and them are working on
NetEase is the title.
NetEase, okay. They are not working on Bungie at all. Destiny at all. And they are not working for anything for... they are not part of that production team. They're not part of the console PC production team. This is for a phone app game. I keep calling it an app game. It's a phone game.
Yeah.
It's for a mobile game.
It is an app, so you're fair enough.
I don't think there's anything to worry about. Now, if I heard NetEase was starting to supplement stuff in Eververse, I might start to worry.
Okay, so here's where I was going with that, and then I'll see if that kind of goes into it. But essentially, the reason that part of this was able to happen, it looks like, is because Bungie is getting invested by NetEase, not necessarily to only do NetEase stuff. It's more because of the
it's
partnership,
like a contractual thing
that they're wanting to do. So they received over $100 million in investment from NetEase. So that seems very likely as to what that was able to get them to not only contract out, and I'm sure that as far as Activision was concerned, getting out from something that they didn't own anyway, they just had contracting rights to, having to pay a fee to break that contract early.
It's probably a big fee too.
Well, from a lot of analysts said that they can't imagine, because the game was considered a underperformer, that Activision would have necessarily wanted a massive. It was probably a sizable enough fee that they were able to somewhat handle due to these investments. So when you think about it this way, Bungie is not only stretched a little further, they're not only making Destiny, they are doing stuff with NetEase that is completely different from Destiny.
Separate, yes.
But because of the investment that was put into them, they were able to take some control over Destiny and finally do what they actually originally wanted to do all along, which was become the masters of their own destiny to an extent, which is something you want to see. A lot of developers want to do that. You saw that happen when we saw Insomniac try and pull away from Sony really hard and say, you know what, we may be independent, but all of our games are Sony handled. Instead, they were like, well, we're going to back off and we're going to find other publishers to do things like that Fuse game or whatever it ended up being called, and the Xbox exclusive that I can't think of right now for some reason, Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah, I was like, I pictured my head because of the denim jackets. And I was just like, yeah.
But when you look at it like that, so it makes sense they want to do this. But this puts not only the game in their hand, this puts the publishing in their hand. Now, what makes that really interesting is how much of an effect is that going to have on the Activision money that was going into the game versus how much more freedom they're going to have to do what they want to do, which we've only seen do great things for Warframe. And I don't necessarily want to spend a long time talking about Warframe in this, but Warframe is not, they do not have a publisher behind them telling them what they can and can't do in their games.
Right.
So they're able to do really crazy updates and provide things in a very weird way that a publisher would never agree to.
Yeah.
But literally, Warframe's developer, Digital Extremes, is the only reason that they're even open still is because of Warframe and the fact that it's all handled by them. So,
which this is a little different though. Like, I don't like bringing up Warframe in terms of this kind of conversation with Destiny, just because of how different the business models for each game are.
Exactly, and that's fair enough. But all I was going to get into is that if Bungie can keep the way that they already do their business model to some extent, without the fear of Activision trying to contractually do something to them if they don't meet windows, because originally the contract for Destiny, as we found between Bungie and Activision, was that a new Destiny game would come out every 2 years. That got moved with Destiny 2 into a 3-year window, and it still looks like they'll probably follow that 3-year window with a Destiny 3 releasing in 2020 before we get into the rest of this conversation. But they can keep that.
I'm going to put a pin in that. Just remind me of the release dates.
Okay, sure.
Schedules.
But so essentially what they can do there, or with what they're getting back, is that they have the freedom to not have to worry about whether the update that they're wanting to do or the expansion that they're wanting to do is going to fit into Activision's grander schemes and ideas about what this game is supposed to be doing.
Which I think a lot of people should know that Activision had a big hand in the release dates, more so the deadlines for content and update and patches. So what that means is that you may very well see content gaps that have been greater than before because they are not pressured to make content in such a short window of time, which is going to be what I think might happen to Destiny 3. It may be delayed a little bit later than what people expect. I think that maybe even stuff such as DLCs or expansions, because those are, Bungie's pretty much made that a separate thing now. Now that we got Black Armory, which is a paid DLC, that is not an expansion by any real means.
Yeah.
And I do think that you may see bigger gaps in time across those, but I think that the quality of content that we'll get instead, or that offsets the gap in time, the delay, that will be better than what we have seen. I think it's hard to judge until it actually happens.
Okay, well, let's get into the meat of it and just open it wide open. So the first thing, obviously, like we've already said, is that there's none of this weird publisher pressure and putting their hand into the pot from Activision. Now, I think the first thing that me and Saul definitely agree on, and then we can get into kind of the smaller details about the game's handling, Oh yeah, but I mean, but there's other things that I want to talk about just a little bit, like what you're actually talking about right there. I actually have some slightly different things that go back to what I thought Destiny 2 should have done to an extent that I knew. To an extent, it was a mixture of probably it was contractual of what it was expected from Destiny from Bungie when they did the publishing agreement. But regardless, the biggest thing that I think comes down from all this is that. The first point that me and Saul immediately said when we were talking is that the number one thing that happens is that from here on, Destiny is entirely in the hands of Bungie, meaning that when they mess up, the onus is entirely on them, and that they don't have the Activision scapegoat anymore. But on the flip side, if they do exactly what it sounds like they're going to want to do and take this into their hands and do what they know the community wants first and foremost and see how that's going to monetarily benefit them, then they also reap the rewards solely. And Activision doesn't get any of that praise. So, I mean, I know that Saul agrees with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to add anything into that statement-wise?
Not really, but the fact that you mentioned that Bungie getting the praise and Activision really didn't see limelight in that is important for something else later.
Well, you can go ahead and break into it because that's really what I wanted to do.
Well, that's what is important into that is that the most single-handedly important aspect about this separation to me as a Destiny fan is that now we know when we can truly hold Bungie accountable for actions that they take with this game.
And that means on both sides. That means accountable for good things and
bad things. And I think that a lot of people have been wrongly, and we're not going to go down the Blizzard rabbit hole. I think we pretty much talked that out last night in the PlayStation chat.
Sure.
But we went down the Blizzard rabbit hole with people blaming Activision on Blizzard stuff. And the very quick rundown of that is that we don't really truly know everything. And they've been with them for 10 years now. It's not something recently happening that people think like, oh, it's all Activision. You're just blaming Activision because that's the cool thing to do. Unless you know it's Activision stated from another source that it says this is Activision. And I think that's the problem with
9 times out of 10, anytime that you want to put blame on one person when there's more than one
publisher,
when there's more than one party involved, that's never true. It's almost always both. Now the severity of what we don't know.
And that's my favorite aspect about this separation is that now we can hold Bungie accountable for the highs and the lows, no matter what they are.
Sure.
We can see the content that they're going to put out and see really what Activision did and did not do. Because according to some other things that I've read about this is that really Deadlines and Eververse was the strongest stranglehold they had on that game.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm really curious to see is what Bungie does with Eververse. And for those that don't know, Eververse is the only thing in the game that has it's a service. It's a cosmetic service that has microtransactions. It has no pay to win. It has no aspects of the game except for cosmetics, skins of guns and stuff like that. And you get armor sets that are the low, like level 10 that you have to, for instance, the level cap 650. So like you have 640 levels to put in that stuff before it's max level. But that is what I am really curious about with the outcome of that. Are things going to become more cheaper? Is there going to become an alternate currency that we can buy these with? I'm going to assume no for all this, just because it's been a thing now that works for them. Mm-hmm. I've seen often people who don't play the game, who aren't up on the game, think that this is some kind of really negative thing across the community.
And some pay to win.
Yeah, Eververse is not that bad. Like, you get stuff by leveling up. There's nothing there's been times I've bought stuff in Eververse like with real money to get like cool cosmetic things that I think I've told the story before. I spent $40 on Eververse boxes in Destiny 1 to get the Ghost shell. That was the Ghost shell that had the little sheet draped over it.
Yeah.
Like a ghost.
Yeah.
I spent $40 for that. That's not hurting anybody. That's not a pay to win feature. It's not making me better. So
the Ghost did nothing of value. It's entirely visual.
Yeah, I mean, it was a value, but it was not a player advantage value.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
It had a perk to it that was like it would not.
No statistical value.
No statistical value. Yeah. It was helping you find other stuff or summoning your Sparrow faster. None of this has massive impacts on gameplay.
Well, and that's just random rolls. Those random rolls exist on the normal items anyway.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing that you just said is they don't even have to worry about making another currency because they already do have. Now you could try and maybe remember when there was that level gate, I'll call it, going on where people were saying that they were actually slowing down the amount of experience they were supposed to be giving you.
Was that actually going on? I can't remember that or not.
From what people said, yes. We don't know for sure, but it sounded like what was going on is that Bungie had artificially choke.
Oh, you mean Activision? Because this is a negative thing.
Well, exactly. So
No,
I'm
playing the part of
exactly, and that's what I mean.
Activision.
Is we don't know if Activision told Bungie like, hey, people are getting Eververse items for free too often. We want to incentivize them more to spend money on them, so we want to make it harder for them to reach this level that's supposed to give them a free one.
Every day I play, just to cut you off real quick, every day I play, I get Eververse items.
Me too.
It's like every day I play, I get a Brightening Ring.
I normally get 2 to 3.
I don't get that many, but I also play on multiple characters a day too.
Exactly,
But,
and I don't.
and the leveling XPs are always different for me that I don't end up getting them. But yeah, like I think it's gonna be fine. Like I think that the overall statement of this, for me at least, is that I am really excited to see what happens. I'm really cautious about the way it's going to proceed, but it's one of those very cautiously optimistic things. Like, I love Bungie. I've loved Bungie for the past 15 years of my life. Ever since Halo 1 that came out in 2001. That's been actually not 15. It's been, 17 years?
Yeah.
But technically 18. But ever since Halo 1, I've loved Bungie. I think they have been one of the best studios in gaming. They create some of the coolest lore, and I'm excited to see what they do. That doesn't mean, though, that if they mess up, I'm going to be like, oh, no, they didn't mean to do that.
They get
like,
a pass.
Okay, yeah, it's now all blame is on them. And, of course, there are things that
Which
happen.
is freeing and also terrifying.
Yeah, because when they have the high highs, you celebrate those. When they have the low lows, what is it that you do? Like people, what is the...
Cry in the fetal position?
No, it's like you hear this used on dogs. Like, what is it? You rub their nose in the carpet or something.
Oh, God. Okay.
I'd never have liked that.
Reprimanded.
saying. Yeah, but
but
you reprimand them.
Look, I agree with you, and actually I think the wording used is exactly what I would use, cautiously optimistic. But obviously that means that I do have a generally positive outlook on this. But you've said exactly what I kind of wanted to get into in terms of why by saying that some things were so easily thrown on Activision when they're not. I'm going to do a quick plug for something that's has nothing to do with me, but it is a good book. And thanks to Blake for letting me borrow his
Blood and Pixels.
Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier.
I still need what is it? It's an audiobook, right?
Well, you can buy the book or audiobook. I listen to it as an audiobook.
I've been really wanting to read this book.
So anyway, there's a section that goes over actually Destiny 1 and all the problems they faced. And then there's been a lot of stuff online as well talking about the problems with Destiny 2 prior to release. And some are rumored and some of them are very realistically rumored, but we still don't know if they've ever been confirmed. Ooh. But this is what we will say. Activision may have had some of the problems. Bungie was culpable in the 99... Well, at least with the most massive problems that I think Destiny has faced, Bungie's culpable in pretty much all of them. So if you listen to this book, it goes into the fact that Bungie, when it gained its freedom and trying to make this game, didn't have a solid idea of what they were trying to do, and they kept trying and swinging around certain ideas, and that the reason that the first game launched in such a weird space is that it had the gameplay that they wanted more or less locked down from the way that the gunfire felt and everything like that, but they didn't know how they wanted to handle story, lore, and loot. So they were kind of rolling through these different things, and the game kind of came together in the last few months before it was supposed to release after being delayed a couple of times because Bungie themselves as a company could not get their stuff together. Now, what ended up happening is that after Destiny 1 launched, they slowly started bringing in more people to support the game. And then I think part of what happened with Destiny 2 is that the group of people that finally landed on what Destiny was supposed to be throughout the development of Destiny 1 that started to leave.
Live team.
Well, in general, but I mean,
yeah.
But there was a lot of people. Essentially, I can't remember exactly what the thing was, but I was reading an article that went into it, and I'm fairly positive this is true. I didn't really look up the information, but it seems very plausible that less than 20% of the employees there are people that were in Bungie whenever they signed their little freedom from Microsoft agreement and they got out on their own.
Yeah, dude,
less than 20% of the employees.
Turnover for Bungie has been a very, very interesting thing to think about. When you go from 343 to Bungie, back when that happened in Halo, technically Halo 4 and Reach. Technically Reach I think was the last Bungie
Reach was the last Bungie made
but
Halo.
When you look at it, things like the Marty O'Donnell scandal that happened with Bungie where it ended in a lawsuit and very bad blood between them, it's a very, very interesting company to keep track of for the past 16 years or whatever of my life.
And it's important to say that was all original
Bungie's fault.
Yeah.
And it's all their fault too for the way that transpired. Like, so that goes to show you that Bungie doesn't have a perfect track record.
They don't. And I think when you look at the stuff they were talking about...
So as much as I like to... I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this real quick. I don't mean to cut you off. But
you're fine, go ahead.
As much as I love them, that's not to say they're not perfect. Like, I do
that
see
they are
them
perfect,
as that they're not perfect. They are not perfect.
But you said it doesn't mean that they're not perfect.
Does not mean that they're not perfect. Yeah, that's a double.
It doesn't mean they're perfect. I got you.
Yeah.
It's a double negative, not a double entendre.
Yeah, double negative. I don't look. I'm hungry, but yeah. It just goes to show you that like as much as I love this company, that I will see the flaws in them, and I do see the flaws in them. Just like I see the flaws in my Nintendo Switch that I have. That is basically a portable indie machine. That
Sure.
There's flaws to be seen, and I think that there's a big problem in this day and age with gaming, that when things like this happen, people force the blame and force praising on the wrong groups, and that there's not enough accountability to be held for. And we talked about this last night, how like when Blizzard messes up, it's always Activision that gets the blame. It's never Blizzard. Well, unless you really know that it's Activision that messed up, I'm gonna hold them both accountable, and it's ridiculous because in this day and age recently, I keep saying day and age today, I don't know why, but recently there's been a lot of hate that always seems to fall on EA, Activision, BioWare. It's so easy to point a finger at the publisher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's warranted. When you actually look at the problems that happened with Dead Space 3's development, a lot of them came, it was entirely EA.
Yeah, I'll say that's like 90% of it was
and
EA,
even
really.
Dead Space 2 was a struggle of the only reason they got to even make it as close to what they wanted for Dead Space 2 was because of time constraints. So, but yeah, sometimes blame and onus should rightfully fall into the publisher and them meddling too much, which, to be fair, they are a business, they fund the games. It is ultimately up to them as to what they want their games to be. But continue, Saul. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I thought of a phrase.
Struggle bus?
Yeah, I thought of a phrase that Joe used, and I was like, man, I giggle every time I hear it. But yeah, it's not really, realistically, it's basically what I said last night, and what I brought up at the very beginning, that when there is a company to be blamed, people, no matter if you love the company or not, you should still hold that company accountable for when they need to be blamed. Yeah. And it's a very big problem that people have. I've done it before in the past. I like this company. I didn't want to see them mess up, so you make up excuses for them. Sure. But in reality, recently I've come to see that that's not a proper way to go about it, because if you don't criticize that company for when they mess up, and when you stay on a company and think that like when there's something they're doing wrong and you're justifying it in your mind and you're justifying it to other people because you don't want it to be wrong, but you think it is, or you think it's right, you're hurting the company, because they need to see that change, because companies listen to that kind of negative connotation about a decision they've made. Sure. So I think that it's important that's just my little hidden message in this topic specifically, because it's so relevant with Activision being the bad guy 99% of the time, when in reality, we don't know who it is. And this is going to be the perfect example of a studio that people have blamed Activision for day in and day out. And now we really know if it was really Activision or not.
And the moment they make a big mistake, people are going to be like, wow.
Yep. And it's going to be like, well, Bungie, you messed up. You better fix it.
Yeah. And actually, to round off what you're talking about, how they're not perfect, where I was going with the original point was that Destiny 2 has been rumored and essentially confirmed from another people, but never officially confirmed by either Bungie or, Bungie as an official statement or Activision as an official statement, that essentially Destiny 2 had to restart development from the ground up about 8 to 9 months before the game released. Think about how crazy that is. And that all came down to the fact that Bungie couldn't get their stuff together. Again, this came down to Bungie's problems.
Exactly.
Now you could say that maybe they were trying to be too ambitious within the time constraints given, but when you understand and you made a contract about what your time constraints are, and then you still over promise or don't get your stuff together and try and do it, it still falls on the Bungie. So when these things happen, it is ultimately, like we said, there's this mix between it being actually Bungie's fault, and then sometimes it's going to be Activision's fault.
Because when somebody messes up, you want somebody to blame.
Yeah.
When there's two parties, like when there's mom and dad, you don't know who to blame. So you automatically fixate on the one that you already have the least amount of good feelings for. So
exactly.
It's always Activision,
or the one that, and you feel like it's even easier because they're the ones funding it. So in your mind, the people funding are going to be the ones who want to try and get the most out of it. Yeah. And by doing so, they're going to bastardize the game. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. Yeah. But to go into a point kind of now that we can stem off of that and kind of a segue from it, one of the things that I'm hoping that we see Destiny do and Bungie do with Destiny that I feel like actually may have been, I mean, realistically it was both fault because they signed the contract, but it was obviously something that I think was more pressured from Activision to try and put a new game out and do all these things, or Bungie trying to cater to what Activision wanted, so trying to do this in a way, because like one of the things that went to is that people talked about Destiny 2 went too casual friendly in an attempt to try and pull more players in.
Yeah.
And then what happened is that Forsaken actually fixed all that. All the stuff
it brought back the technical stuff that made
exactly that Destiny 2 launched without.
Yeah.
So with that said, in that particular vein of thinking, one of the things that I've constantly given crap to Destiny 2 for that I just did not understand, and I hope that Destiny 3 or whatever it's going to be, I always stated that in my opinion, Destiny 2 could have still been called Destiny 2 or Destiny surname.
How would you feel if Destiny 3 was Destiny 2? Like, it was the same game. It was a $60 update.
If it's a $60 update, exactly what I want. That's exactly where I was going.
Yep.
This is what needs to happen. Destiny 2 should not have been an individual game.
I'm going to say, though, just based off the nature of the way games work, since this is an on-console MMO, which is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it an on-console MMO.
I mean, I think we've been fair enough to say that it's the closest thing that you can call it.
Yeah, I'm going to say, though, just financially, it makes more sense for them to launch a disc version for $60. Now, whether or not that's going to be... it's a BB, ball bearing. But I don't know if it's more financially, advisable for them to release a the game or an update on the disc or whatever. But like, I feel like if people have an issue with the game, which I actually don't see a lot of with Destiny 2 compared to then. Yeah. It makes sense to release it because it's almost like here's a new start.
Well, this is why I'll say that I know where your intentions are coming from, but there's two things. We've already
I know.
We've already seen the MMO business. Well, I'm not seeing the downsides, but we already know that the MMO business can embrace this easily with a disc.
That's what I'm saying.
Of a new game.
Well,
so like Forsaken. Yeah, Stormblood, I was going to say actually.
14 for Stormblood came out as a disc.
On a disc.
Yep, and it was a 40...
Forsaken as an expansion.
$50 disc, I think, actually.
Forsaken as an expansion, trying to get people to come in. Some people who never even played Destiny 2, if I'm remembering Donovan's conversation, but I know my own people. Donovan, we were playing the other day, and he said that he's had friends that that hadn't played this since Destiny 1, that Forsaken made them get back in, that made them get into Destiny 2. Yeah. So you don't need
Taken King was very similar to Destiny 1.
You don't need this new start. They're put out on a disc with the base game and the update on a disc.
I think it's a mentality thing for certain people.
To some extent, but I think you can do that through messaging. Final Fantasy 14 online, when it first launched,
before Realm Reborn.
Exactly. When Realm Reborn happened, it was essentially a new game and a new mindset.
In the coolest way. I've said that many times on this podcast.
And they did not make it a new separate game. If you had a 14 account, I mean, it was and it wasn't. You didn't have to buy something new. If you already owned 14, Stormblood happened, and all that changed is that you had to start paying your subscription.
Not Stormblood.
Oh, not Stormblood. I'm sorry, but Realm Reborn. So
Realm Reborn.
We've already seen this happen. You can change the outlook of a game. Final Fantasy 14 was one of the most hated games that came out, and they were able to completely turn it around and release something that made a very, very successful MMO for Square now, with all messaging and making sure that the people who already owned 14, who were still playing for free at that point in time, all they had to do was to start paying the subscription. They'd already bought the game.
Which, if
everybody else, they got a new version on a disc that they could put in, and it was just there.
I think I remember for the first 3 months too, they'd have to pay the subscription.
Probably
they had
not.
a grace period.
Probably not.
I don't remember if it was 1, 2, 3, 6 or whatever it was. But yeah, like it seems like we are all on completely the same page with everything, and I'm really excited the way it looks. Like,
so would you agree? Are you swinging more towards the side of hoping that Destiny starts to become a game that just updates on the same game? I've said before,
I understand both sides. Yeah, like I don't mind whichever way it goes, but there are valid points on both sides on why separate game, new console or new disc versus new DLC, new disc. Like it makes sense, and I get it, because there's still the one or two people this time around, not 10 or 15 you saw way back when, but the 1 or 2 people that comment on Twitter on the Destiny advertised Twitter promoted things or whatever.
Yeah,
you'll see who cares about this dead game. And it's like the dude has no comments, no likes, nothing, because nobody.
Yeah, because the game's not dead anymore.
It's that one guy that's just like, this game's dead. It's like, you are out of the loop.
Yeah, very much so. So quick, and this is real quick. With Bungie being able to, because they're already bigger than just their Destiny team. We already know that. We already know that they're working with NetEase in some form or fashion. What do you hope, if this does even come to a point, if Bungie starts to grow into a multi-team studio, which technically they are, because you have the live team and the and whatever you want to call it, the other team for Destiny. You know, they already bounce things between two.
Yeah.
But let's say that's almost like taking the one team and breaking it into 2 teams. So if we're going to see them move into if we're going to see this move and this investment from NetEase move them into them growing big enough to make an entirely separate team that exists within a similar housing or whatever.
What do I want to see from them?
What would you want to see them do new?
So they've already said that it is not related to Destiny, and it's more than likely a mobile game.
Oh, fair enough.
That's two very.
I'll give you that. So I guess what I was going at is we already know that the phone game is most likely because of NetEase. But
are you talking about what I want to see Destiny or Bungie do with
separate from
a
NetEase?
console Destiny?
Yeah, or PC, whatever they decide to do. Marathon. Okay, so pull me in what Marathon is.
Marathon is a very classic PC shooter that I think eventually came to Xbox, the original Xbox.
The name sounds familiar. You keep talking.
You've seen Marathon before. You played Halo 3, and I know about not much. The Marathon armor.
I beat Halo 3.
I'm talking about the multiplayer. Because the Marathon armor was armor in. I don't know. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to Google it that easily. But it was in Halo 3, and it's a very classical Doom style shooter game.
Oh, so this was their first game before Halo.
First game before Halo. Technically.
It was when they were working with Apple.
So yeah, and I think it was. Actually, I did say Windows. I think it was a Mac only game at the very beginning.
It was.
Yeah, you're right.
But it did eventually come over to Windows.
Did it come to Xbox? I don't think so, but like something in the back of my head is telling me it did. Okay, good. But yeah, it's a very classical Doom style shooter that like I would be thrilled to see Bungie redo Marathon akin to Bethesda and
ID.
id. Yeah. Is it id or ID?
It's id.
Okay.
That's what they call it. It's soft.
I get, it's soft. Okay. I always get those two, like, I know it's not interchangeable, but I would like to see Marathon come back the same way Doom came back. And I think it'd be very cool to see. I think Bungie has the talent for it. You could see gunplay in Destiny is fantastic as always. So gunplay in a fast action shooter like that would be great.
And removed from the idea, because the one downside to Destiny for people who just like traditional shooters is that
it's too fast.
The game, well, not even that. The gameplay of Destiny, and I've even loathed it a couple of times myself, but the game and what it tries to do and the way that it's set up, it requires bullet sponges. But other games don't.
Yeah, well, and it's technical to move, I should say. Like it's Destiny for somebody who's not used to first person games, who doesn't play them that much, has a very steep learning curve in the way you use things, such as holding circle and stuff to use your ability.
Sure.
Or because you don't typically do that kind of stuff in first person shooters.
Yeah.
It's all one taps.
It is more palatable than again bringing up Warframe, but it is more palatable than Warframe. Understanding what you're supposed to do in Warframe with your frames and stuff is way more complicated. So
way more complicated.
Destiny have actually done a good job, or Bungie have done a great job with Destiny in making sure that how you play and stuff is a like you say, it is a more steep learning curve, but it's not one that feels insurmountable without other people helping you.
Right.
You can play it on your own, and they do a lot of.
I'm just saying it's a steep learning curve for somebody who doesn't play first person shooters.
Yeah, sure.
But the second thing, the one I would be happy with either one of these. I would be happier with Marathon, but if they would announce a complete remake, not a remaster, but a remake of Oni.
Oh yeah,
which is for those that don't know, it's a PS2 exclusive game.
Oh, was it PS2 exclusive?
I'm 99% sure that game was
I thought it was just a multi-platform.
No, but it was a mech game basically on PS2. I'm pretty sure that was not an Xbox. Double check me.
I am.
My
I'm looking
computer's
right now.
down, but I would love to see either one of those games come back. Oni had a really, really cool character as the main character too. She was awesome. But other than that, like,
it was PC, PS2.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew it didn't come on Xbox because that was the time I had both systems and I primarily played Xbox.
It was like I remember, and I love the cover art because of it. The art style they chose to use is like if you took Cowboy Bebop and Ghost in the Shell, just slam them together.
Dude, the game is fantastic.
So this is actually ticking into essentially what I wanted, because look, what I want to see them do more than anything is keep Destiny alive, obviously, because it's a great thing and they do a good job with shooter games. But you know how cool it would be to finally see them go back to something that's just not so shooter focused? The thing about Oni that was so cool is that Oni it was third person, first of all, which is very weird for them. It was third person. The only time you see third person from them right now is when you're dealing with swords and in a vehicle essentially on Destiny.
The main character was a girl with purple hair.
Yeah, but the thing that it does, I can't remember that. But look, essentially what it comes down to, the reason I like this idea so much, and I would be okay with them just doing something entirely new, but the idea of remaking Oni is actually kind of cool because it leads them to actually being able to do something they haven't done in a long time.
Kanoko.
I think they need to flex that they can do more than just be a one-trick pony with shooting games. I think it would be very cool.
Technically, that existing proves that. It's just they need to prove it again because it's been so long.
But it's been over 2 decades.
No.
Well, not since it came out, but since they started developing
it.
97 is when they started developing it.
Oni?
Yeah.
So
And
that game was
it-
in development at the same time.
And it came out in 2000, very early 2001.
Because Marathon came out in 98.
4.
94?
Yeah.
That
So-
shows you how much I didn't care about Max because I was 3 years old.
Yeah. So look, my thing behind that though is that they get to show a game where it's third person. They're actually dealing with other moves. It's not entirely gun focused, and I think that's how you do that. I think seeing them step back and do something that's a little more action adventure oriented or something like that
It'd be a good change.
because you've said it exactly right. No matter what you want to say, and even though it was really complicated in Destiny 1, they do have really cool lore. They always have.
Bungie, okay, there are two things now.
So put that lore into something that's more focused on telling an amazing story instead of Destiny. Destiny is not as much about the story as it is about the gameplay experience.
I do think though that like with the lore involving Destiny, the lore in Destiny that is not told to you directly it's very similar like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but it has some of the best lore in video game history, in my opinion, because I like space stuff, and this is the equivalent of like space magic and stuff. But the other thing that Bungie does really, really well is soundtracks, even without Marty O'Donnell.
Yeah.
So what would be really cool to see is not something that is a remake of an older game of theirs, but a new cinematic, story-driven game.
See, that's what I want. I want to
Something
see them
like,
do something where they're... Because even Halo, that's the thing about Halo. Even Halo is not really a cinematic experience. It never has been.
What was that witch game called? The first-person shooter game that was like really cool looking? That
Witch game.
Yeah, like it was... Witchburn?
Oh, the one that you were talking about.
Yeah, the
Yes.
one I showed you, I think like 4 or 5 episodes
that
ago.
looked awesome.
But like if they did something like that, where it was like very cinematic and very...
Witchfire.
Witchfire, yeah.
Which apparently is based off of a novel.
It is, yeah. I think it's a novel.
Or actually volume... So it looks like a comic. From over here.
I think there's a game that was coming out that was written... or based off of a novel that was written by the same author of Metro. It's an indie game.
I'm not sure. But either way, this is actually pretty interesting. And
Dude, if Bungie was to make a game like this with their lore and their soundtracks, 10 out of 10. Like,
I really want to. Yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with them sticking with their first person and doing something more akin to what you see with like
more
this
slower first
or
person.
Dishonored,
Yeah. This is
where it's
more methodical, thought out,
Yeah.
more. Dishonored is actually perfect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great
comparison.
example
Yeah.
of going first person, but keeping some things that because like one of the examples of that, right? Something that doesn't happen in Destiny at all, but you see in other games like Dishonored or like the Batman Arkham series and Spider-Man and whatnot. I didn't see it as much in Spider-Man. It's actually one of the reasons I didn't think Spider-Man was as good. But natural dialogue that you only hear if you sneak around and creep around and you hear the NPCs talking, and you learn you learn lore by hearing
Dishonored,
talking and stuff like that.
Not only Dishonored, Divinity does that
Really well.
the best. Like
Cool.
there is just stuff you hear in that game. There's I've never seen this personally. I've had people tell me this though, so take this with a grain of salt. I don't know how true this is, but like there is, when you're sneaking around, you can literally hear things that people are talking about that will initiate quests for you that you would not have access to unless you snuck around at that particular one moment.
That's awesome.
And like 100 lines of dialogue and heard that.
Yeah.
Because you would know to go do certain things to activate it.
And that's essentially what I was getting at with Batman. Arkham City was so great at that. There was so much dialogue that was not heard
Arkham
if you just
City-
busted in and started killing everybody.
I remember
I love that idea because if you give Bungie the ability to do that, like we've already talked about, they have great lore. Let them tell their great lore in more interesting ways.
I forgot how much it was, but I remember reading the amount of Arkham City dialogue, like the count.
Was incredible for the time period.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I
You see games going high now with things like The Witcher 3 and obviously Red Dead Redemption. But when you look at something like Arkham City back in 2011 when it came out, that was incredible. You know?
Yeah, I can't find it. I really want to say it was 13,000 like total lines of dialogue in that game, which when you think about it, for a single player Batman game, that is a lot of lines.
Yeah.
And that's not like, don't get me wrong, not words. This is these are sentences. 13,000 sentences and sentences. But my throat has still been messed up. Like ever since I got on with that one night, when we talked to John, I was like coughing. I was like, I got like a tonsil stone.
Yep.
Those suck.
Anyway, so I mean, I don't want to have this going any longer if we don't have anything else to say, but I thought that was an interesting idea.
No, yeah,
what do you let Bungie do when they're not tied to Destiny? Because
make one of those 3 games.
The thing about being tied to Activision is that it puts so much pressure on them that they have to utilize everybody to make sure they're hitting these deadlines that we were talking about.
Honestly, this is going to be the real fanboy answer, but when Destiny 3 wraps up completely in like whatever 4 years or
whatever it is,
make a new Destiny like universe game. Like not like the same style of Destiny, but like have it take place in the Destiny universe.
Make a cinematic
lore.
Story. Oh man, that would be
really
interesting.
Cool. But
change the dynamic, but have it to almost have it to where all the and you could go way different with it, and they could tell a more personal single person story.
Yeah, like maybe you play alongside Zavala 10 years back before like when all this happened.
You play through the origins of the Traveler. That would be really cool.
That would be actually pretty cool because you would basically maybe you were a speaker for the Traveler that took you to the planets it visited. And like,
well, because what's funny about the speaker thing is that the speaker, as we learned in Destiny 2.
Well, there's a lot of depth to that line.
Sure.
Because he says like I said I speak for the Traveler. I never said he spoke to me, but in reality, like he made it sound like he was a con man, but that's half true. Because he still communicated with the Traveler. Like he was not a 100% con man.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but my point being in general is that it'd be so interesting because I've always said that the thing that I hope Destiny doesn't do too quick is that they don't overly explain, and I think it'd be best for them to leave a lot of vagueness to the Traveler, because that could be the penultimate way to make the final game in the Destiny universe.
Speaking of which, and
even then you could leave it to where, like we talked about with Kingdom Hearts, tell us just enough to where we understand something about Kingdom Hearts / if we're using that one, / the Traveler if we're talking about Bungie, and then at the end of all that, give us just so much to where we still have a couple of questions that aren't answered, but we're satisfied otherwise. That way, if you decide that you want to make a new game in this universe way later, you can continue on and find some new way to do it. But I have a feeling that from the stuff we've been hearing about Destiny 3's story, that I think they're doing exactly that. They're not going to, the rumors, if they're true, is not going to give too much away about the Traveler.
Not only that, but there was the main rumor from the leaker who has been right about everything up until now, Anon of the Nine, leaked that there is almost a path you can choose in light or dark in Destiny 3. So that would be dope.
And that's cool as well. That's a good way to move it forward. All right, well, I think we are just about done with today's episode. It's been a pretty long one, a little over 2 hours, so that's pretty cool. But with that said, Saul, I think that we have said everything there is to say. So this has been Triangle Squared. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to our patrons, Chad V, Dan Barber, Josh Jarrell, Mikey12, my name is Dan, Douglas Below, Sean Santarud, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Travis Below, Blake Popst, and Eduardo Palomino. Thank you for re-upping, good sir. If you would like to support us, like we said, the link is in the description below. Thank you.